Let go of my wrist. Amelia said it quietly, but Ryan's grip only tightened his fingers, pressing into the exact place that had bruised 3 days ago. She felt the familiar pull of panic, that sick, shrinking feeling she had learned to hide behind a smile. 400 people filled that ballroom, and not one of them saw what was happening 18 inches from the champagne table. Then she saw him, standing alone near the far wall. Dark suit, still as stone, eyes that swept the room like he owned every corner of it. Before her mind could stop her body, Amelia Carter walked straight toward Damian Romano and kissed him. If you're watching this, and your heart is already racing, welcome. Subscribe to our channel, follow this story all the way to the end, and drop a comment telling us what city you're watching from. I want to see exactly how far this story travels. She did not plan it. That was the truth she would return to later when she tried to make sense of the most terrifying and reckless decision of her life. There was no strategy, no careful calculation, no moment where Amelia Carter stepped back and weighed her options. There was only Ryan's hand on her wrist, the pressure of his fingers telling her everything she needed to know about how the rest of the night would go, and then across a ballroom full of New York's wealthiest people, a man standing completely alone. Damian Romano did not look like salvation. He looked like a different kind of danger. But Amelia had learned something in 2 years with Ryan Mitchell. She had learned that the danger you know will always destroy you. At least the danger you don't know yet carries the possibility of surprise. She pulled her wrist free. Ryan's head turned toward her the second she moved. Amelia. His voice was low, controlled. The voice he used in public, smooth as polished wood, not the one that came out behind closed doors. Where are you going? I need some air, she said, because it was the kind of answer he couldn't argue with in front of people. His eyes told her he wasn't finished. She walked away before his hand could find her again. The charity gala filled the grand ballroom of the Hargrove Hotel, one of those Manhattan institutions that had been hosting the city's most powerful families for over a century. Crystal chandeliers threw golden light over 300 tables. A string quartet played something Amelia couldn't name. Waiters moved through the crowd with practiced invisibility, offering things on silver trays that cost more than her weekly grocery budget. She had come as Ryan's guest. She always came as Ryan's guest. That was the arrangement. She showed up looking the way he required, hair-done dress chosen by him, jewelry he had selected because it photographed well, and she smiled and laughed and made him look like a man who was loved. In return, he let her sleep in the apartment. She hated herself for thinking of it that way. But she had learned to be honest with herself in the quiet spaces inside her own head, because nowhere else was safe anymore. She moved through this crowd, nodding at people she recognized from previous events. The wife of a finance executive caught her eye and smiled. Amelia smiled back. She had stopped trying to send signals through those smiles months ago. Nobody looked closely enough to see what was underneath. She was almost to the far side of the room when she realized she had no destination. She had simply needed to be moving because moving made Ryan hesitate. He didn't like making scenes. He liked control, which meant he liked things to look voluntary. If she kept moving, if she stayed visible, if she stayed in the middle of the crowd, that was when she saw him. She had heard the name Damian Romano before. Anyone who spent enough time in Ryan's world heard it eventually, the way you heard thunder before a storm. It was a name people said differently than other names. Quieter. More careful. The kind of name that came with a pause before and after it, as if the person saying it needed a moment to make sure nobody important was listening. She had never seen him in person. He was standing at the far edge of the room, near the tall windows that overlooked Fifth Avenue. Not at a table. Not in conversation. Just standing, holding a glass he wasn't drinking from, watching the room the way a chess player watches a board, not any single piece, but all of them at once. He was taller than she had expected, darker. His suit was black, which made him stand out in a room full of navy and charcoal. He wore no pocket square, no elaborate tie. Everything about him was stripped down to function. He looked like a man who had nothing to prove to anyone in that room. That was what made him visible. Every other man there was performing something: wealth, confidence, influence. Damien Romano was simply present, and somehow that made him impossible to look away from. Amelia became aware of Ryan at the same moment she became aware of Damien. She heard Ryan's footsteps behind her. She had learned to recognize them over 2 years, the particular weight and rhythm of them, the way they changed depending on his mood. These footsteps were too controlled, too deliberate, the kind he used when he had decided something. She had perhaps 5 seconds. Later, she would not be able to explain it any better than this. Her body moved before her mind gave permission. She crossed the 30 feet of ballroom between herself and Damien Romano, the way a person crosses the distance to something they are terrified of, but more terrified of missing. Her heels on the marble floor made almost no sound. People stepped aside without quite knowing why. She stopped in front of him. He was already looking at her. His eyes were dark, and they were not the eyes of a man who was ever surprised by anything. But they were focused on her completely. And that attention, that absolute total attention, was something she hadn't felt in so long that it almost stopped her. She reached up. Her hands found the lapels of his jacket, and she kissed him. The ballroom did not exactly go silent. The music kept playing, the waiters kept moving, the conversations at 300 tables continued. But there was something, a shift, a collective intake of breath, a ripple that moved through the people nearest to them and kept moving outward until it reached the edges of the room. Heads turned. Champagne glasses paused halfway to lips. Conversations lost their thread. Damien Romano had been kissed by a woman nobody recognized, in front of half of New York's most powerful people. Amelia felt it the second she made contact, the absolute stillness of him. He did not pull away. He did not react with shock. He did not respond the way she had half expected, with immediate anger or the rough rejection of someone who had been violated. He went very, very still. And then his hand slowly, carefully came up to rest at her waist. Not possessively. Not the way Ryan's hands always landed on her, with that underlying claim, that silent message of ownership. Damien's hand rested there the way a wall exists, something solid and present and without agenda. She pulled back. Her heart was hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. She was breathing too fast. Up close, Damien Romano was even more intimidating than he had been from across the room, because up close you couldn't miss the intelligence in his eyes, the way they were already calculating, already reading her. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm sorry I wasn't trying to—" "Look at me," he said. His voice was low, not loud, not commanding in the theatrical sense, just completely certain. The voice of someone who had never needed volume to be heard. She looked at him. "Who is hurting you?" 4 words. 4 words, and Amelia Carter felt something crack open in the center of her chest that she had been holding shut for 2 years. Not because the words were soft. Not because they were kind exactly. But because they were accurate. Because he had looked at her for 10 seconds and seen the thing that 400 people at this party had failed to see in 2 hours. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Ryan appeared at her shoulder. "Damien." Ryan's voice carried the particular quality it had in social situations. Warm, confident, the voice of a man who assumed every room wanted to hear him. "I see you've met my girlfriend." He put his hand on Amelia's back as he said it. She felt his fingers through the fabric of her dress, the slight pressure at her spine. That was a message, not a gesture. Damien did not look at Ryan immediately. He kept his eyes on Amelia for a half-second longer, long enough to see her flinch, long enough for his gaze to drop briefly to her wrist, where the marks from earlier were hidden under her bracelet, and then he turned. "Ryan Mitchell," Damien said. It was not a greeting. It was an identification. "The way you name something you've been watching for a while." "I didn't know you knew Amelia," Ryan said, and his tone had shifted slightly, the warmth thinning at the edges. "We were just getting acquainted." Damien's eyes moved to Amelia again. "Weren't we?" It was not phrased as a question, and Amelia understood with a clarity that surprised her that she was being given something. A door. A moment. A fraction of cover that she could use or refuse. "Yes," she said. Ryan's hand on her back pressed harder. "Amelia's not feeling well," Ryan said, still smiling. "We were actually just heading out." "She looks fine to me," Damien said. The simplicity of it stopped Ryan cold. Not an argument, not a challenge. Just a flat, unconcerned disagreement with Ryan's framing. As if Ryan's version of events had been offered and considered and found lacking. Ryan's smile stayed exactly where it was, but something changed behind it. "I think my girlfriend can speak for herself," Ryan said. "Then let's hear it." Damien looked at Amelia. The entire weight of the moment was on her, and she knew it. Ryan knew it too. She could feel the pressure of his hand on her back, steady, unyielding, communicating without words what would happen later if she made the wrong choice right now. But Damien was looking at her the way nobody had looked at her in years. Like her answer mattered. Like whatever she said, he would believe it. "I'd like to stay," Amelia said. Her voice came out steadier than she expected. Ryan laughed. It was a good laugh, practiced and easy and perfectly calibrated for witnesses. "Of course," he said. "Whatever you want, sweetheart." His hand dropped from her back. He straightened his cuffs. "I'll get us some drinks." He walked away. And Amelia understood with the particular bone-deep dread she had developed over 2 years that she had just made things worse for herself. "Tell me your name," Damien said when Ryan was far enough away. "Amelia Carter." "How long?" She looked at him. "How long has he been doing it?" Damien said. It was not really a question. He already knew the shape of the answer. He was just asking her to confirm it. She had not spoken the truth out loud to anyone in so long that the words felt strange in her mouth, like a language she had almost forgotten. 2 years, she said. Something moved across Damien's face. Not pity. Something harder than pity. Something that looked more like recognition. "Does he know you were planning to leave?" "I've tried 3 times, she said. "He always—" She stopped. She glanced toward the bar where Ryan was talking to someone, laughing, performing his version of himself. "He always finds out before I can." "How?" "My phone, my email, my bank account." She said it quietly, matter-of-factly, the way you describe a weather pattern you've had to learn to live around. "He has access to everything." He made it seem like sharing in the beginning. Damien was quiet for a moment. "You have no money he can't trace." "No." "No one he hasn't already spoken to." "My friends think I'm fine. My sister thinks I'm fine. He's very good at—" She heard her own voice and made herself stop. She had been about to say, "He's very good at explaining things," which was true, and which was one of the most frightening truths about Ryan Mitchell. He was extremely good at explaining things. He could take any incident, any bruise, any breakdown and explain it so completely and so reasonably that the person listening ended up feeling sorry for him. "He's very convincing," she said instead. "I know what he is," Damien said. She looked at him sharply. "I've known Ryan Mitchell's type since I was 12 years old," Damien said. "The suit is different, the money is different, the mechanics are the same." She believed him. She didn't know why exactly. She had been trained by 2 years with Ryan to distrust her own instincts, to second-guess every read she made on another person. But there was something about the way Damien said it, without heat, without performance, without the slightly elevated quality of a man trying to impress her with his empathy, that felt like the truth. Ryan was coming back. She could feel it before she saw it. Some animal awareness she had developed for his movements, his moods, the particular atmosphere he brought with him when he was calculating. "Stay close to me tonight," Damien said. "I don't know you," she said. "No," he agreed. "But you know him." Hey. Ryan's return was managed perfectly the way he always managed things in public. He handed Amelia a glass of champagne with a smile that reached his eyes. He was excellent at making his eyes participate, and turned to Damien with the easy confidence of a man who had convinced himself he'd won the last exchange. "Romano, didn't realize you and I had any overlap in our social circles." "We don't," Damien said. Ryan smiled. "Fair enough. Different worlds." He put his arm around Amelia's shoulders, and she felt the particular weight of it, not affectionate, but structural, like a hand on the back of someone's neck. "Amelia's usually more of a homebody, aren't you, babe?" "She seemed comfortable enough to introduce herself," Damien said. "She's friendly." Ryan's arm tightened almost imperceptibly. "Sometimes too friendly. She doesn't always realize how things look." "How do they look?" Damien asked. The question was clean and direct, and Ryan wasn't prepared for it. He had been expecting deflection or social smoothing, or the kind of polite nothing that most people offered when someone was posturing. He was not expecting to be asked to clarify. "She kissed a man she doesn't know," Ryan said, and now there was something real in his voice underneath the polish, a cold edge. "That's not really appropriate, is it?" "She's a grown woman," Damien said. "She makes her own choices." "Of course she does." Ryan's smile was perfect. "I just look out for her. She has a tendency to make impulsive decisions. She gets anxious at these kinds of events. Sometimes she doesn't think clearly." Amelia felt the words land the way they always did, like something being slowly removed from her piece by piece. Her credibility, her reliability, her version of herself. She had heard Ryan describe her this way to so many people. Anxious, impulsive, doesn't think clearly. He said it with such affection, such loving concern that people always nodded with sympathy. Sympathy for him for the burden of caring for someone so unstable. But Damien was not nodding. "Is that true?" Damien looked at Amelia directly. "What?" she said. "Do you make impulsive decisions? Are you unclear right now about where you are and what you want?" She could feel Ryan's arm on her shoulders like a held breath. She looked at Damien. "No," she said. "Then we'll trust your judgment," Damien said, and turned back to Ryan with an expression that was not hostile and not warm, and communicated with perfect clarity that the conversation about Amelia's mental state was finished. 10. Ryan excused himself to find the men's room 20 minutes later. Amelia counted the seconds until he was out of sight. "I need to show you something," she said. Damien waited. She set down her champagne glass. She reached up with her right hand and slid the bracelet off her left wrist. She held her arm out, turned it so the inside of her wrist faced up. The bruises were yellow at the edges, fresh in the center, 4 finger-shaped marks and a thumbprint. Damien looked at them for a long moment. When he looked back up at her, his eyes were the same. He had not reacted the way people usually reacted when they saw evidence they weren't expecting, with sudden discomfort, with the urge to look away. He looked at the bruises with the same focused attention he gave everything. "From tonight," he said. "From 3 days ago," she said. "He grabs. He doesn't hit often. He's very careful," Damien said. "Yes, because hitting leaves marks that are harder to explain." "Yes." He nodded once, slowly. "I want to leave," Amelia said. "I've wanted to leave for 18 months. I just don't—" She heard the words and tried not to hear how small they sounded. "I don't have anywhere to go that he can't follow. And I don't have anyone who would believe me over him. He has so many people convinced that I believe you," Damien said. Simple. No performance. No qualifying statement about how he needed more information, or how these things were complicated. Just, "I believe you." Amelia had not realized until that moment how long she had been waiting to hear those 3 words from someone. She put the bracelet back on. "I'm not asking you to help me," she said. You asked, and I haven't told anyone in a very long time." "I know," Damien said, "and I'm going to help you regardless." Ryan came back different. Not in any way that would be visible to anyone else. His smile was the same. His posture was the same. But Amelia could read him the way you learn to read weather systems When you live somewhere with dangerous storms, she had developed a sensitivity to the subtle shifts that other people missed. He was angry. She didn't know what had happened in the 10 minutes he was gone, but something had. Maybe someone had said something. Maybe he had overheard something. Maybe it was simply the accumulation of an evening where his control of her had been publicly disrupted. "I think we should head out," he said. His hand found her elbow. "I'm going to stay a bit longer," Amelia said. Ryan's fingers closed around her elbow. "Amelia." His voice was quiet, reasonable, the voice of a man explaining something obvious to someone slower than him. "We have an early morning tomorrow. I told you about that." "You can go ahead," she said. "I'll take a car." She could feel the pressure of his fingers increasing by a degree. Not enough for anyone watching to notice, just enough for her to notice. "I don't think that's a good idea," Ryan said. "I disagree," said Damien. He had moved beside her without her hearing him approach. He was standing slightly in front of her now, not blocking Ryan exactly, but positioned so that Ryan's hand on her elbow required him to reach slightly past Damien to maintain it. Ryan released her arm. It happened automatically, the way you remove your hand from a surface that's unexpectedly hot. Then Ryan seemed to realize what he'd done, and Amelia watched him recalibrate. She could see it, the rapid micro-adjustment, the way he reassembled his expression and his posture. "Romano," he said, "this is a private matter between me and my girlfriend." "It stopped being private when you put your hand on her," Damien said. "I touched her arm," Ryan said. "That's not—" "I know what it is," Damien said. "And you know I know." The shift was remarkable. Every other time Ryan had been questioned by Amelia, by anyone, he had responded with immediate, fluent, convincing counter-narrative. He had explanations for everything. He could reframe any action, any piece of evidence, any testimony, until the person questioning him felt that they had gotten it wrong. But he was not generating a counter-narrative right now. He was calculating something else. Amelia watched him assess Damien Romano and come to a conclusion she had never seen him come to before. Ryan Mitchell was deciding that this was not a battle he wanted to have tonight. "We'll talk later," Ryan said to her. 2 words of warning folded inside a simple sentence. "Yes," she said. "We will." He turned and walked away. And for the first time in 2 years, Amelia Carter watched him go, and did not feel afraid of what came next. She was shaking. She didn't realize it until Damien took the champagne glass from her hand before she dropped it. She looked down at her own fingers as if they belonged to someone else. "I'm sorry," she said. "Stop apologizing," he said without any particular emphasis, as if he were correcting a minor navigational error. "Sit down." She sat. He sat beside her, not across from her, but beside her, and she understood that was deliberate, that it meant nobody approaching them would be able to get between them. "He will come back tonight," Damien said. "Not here, but he'll be waiting when you get home." "I know. Do you have your things with you? Anything essential?" She almost laughed. "No, everything that matters is in the apartment. He took my passport 6 months ago. He said it was for safekeeping." "Classic," Damien said. Not sarcastically, just cataloging it. "My laptop is there, all my photography contracts, my portfolio, my client list, everything. If I walk away without it, I'm starting completely from zero." "You can start from zero," he said. "It's easier than you think when the alternative is staying." "Easy for someone like you to say." "Maybe," he said. "But I've watched people start from zero, and I've watched what happens to people who stayed when they should have gone." He paused. "Zero is recoverable." She looked at him. "You're not who I thought you were," she said. "Nobody is," he said. "That's usually a good thing and a bad thing in equal measure." She almost smiled. The muscles that would make a smile remembered how even if they were rusty. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," Damien said, "you decide whether you trust me enough to leave here with me tonight." She looked around the room at the crystal chandeliers, the perfectly dressed crowd, the practiced ease of a world she had been occupying without belonging to for 2 years. She looked toward the exit where Ryan had disappeared. She looked back at Damien. "Why would you help me?" she asked. "You don't know me. I walked up to you and kissed you without your permission and used you as a human shield. Most people in your position would have walked away the second Ryan showed up." Damien was quiet for a moment. "My mother," he said finally. Just that. She did not ask him to elaborate. The weight of it was in the 2 words complete and self-contained, and she understood that it was the most honest thing he could have said, and that it had cost him something to say it. "Okay," she said. "Okay. I'll trust you." She met his eyes. "But you should know, if you turn out to be the same as him, just more expensive, I will find a way to make your life very difficult." Something happened in his expression that might have been the beginning of a smile. "I'd expect nothing less," he said. They left together. Damien moved through the ballroom with a kind of unhurried authority that created space around him, without requiring any effort. People simply stepped aside the way water moves for something solid. Amelia walked beside him, and felt for the first time in 2 years like she was moving instead of being moved. His car was waiting outside. A black SUV, not flashy. She had half expected something more theatrical, with a driver who opened the door without being signaled, and did not look at her with curiosity or judgment. She got in. The door closed. For a moment, she just sat in the back of the car in the winter dark of Manhattan and let herself breathe. "I need to tell you something," Damien said when the car had been moving for a few minutes. "All right, I know more about Ryan Mitchell than I said in there." She turned to look at him. "He has been on my radar for 2 years, Damien said. "Not because of you, because of his business practices. 3 women have brought complaints against him to his company's HR department in the last 18 months. All 3 were quietly settled. He has a talent for making problems disappear before they reach the level of public record." She stared at him. "You knew," she said. "I knew he had a pattern," Damien said. "I did not know the details. I did not know about you specifically." "But you knew." She stopped, collected herself. "You knew what kind of person he was, and you were in the same room with him tonight at a charity event." "Yes." "That doesn't bother you." "It bothered me considerably," Damien said. "Which is why I was watching the room." She thought about that. About what it meant that he had been watching. About whether it changed anything. "The 3 women," she said. "Do you know them? I know their names." "Can they be found?" "If they choose to be," he said. "That's their decision." She nodded slowly. The car moved through Manhattan traffic, the city lights shifting across the windows in rivers of red and gold. "He's going to come after me," she said. "You know that. He's not going to just accept this. He's going to say I was unstable, that I ran off with someone that you—" "He can say what he wants," Damien said. "Let him. You don't understand how convincing he is." "Amelia." He waited until she was looking at him. "I have spent 15 years in a world where convincing liars are the majority population. I am not going to be convinced." She held his gaze. "I'm scared," she said. It was the most honest thing she had said to another person in 2 years, and she said it the way you put down something very heavy, with relief, and with the slight shock of realizing how long you'd been carrying it. "That makes sense," Damien said. "You should be careful. Fear that's accurate is useful. You're not going to tell me there's nothing to be afraid of." "No," he said. "There's quite a lot to be afraid of. But afraid and trapped are not the same thing. And you just stopped being trapped." She turned back to the window. The city moved past her, all that light, all that relentless, brilliant, indifferent city light, and somewhere behind her, Ryan Mitchell was realizing that something had changed. That the thing he had controlled for 2 years had moved beyond his reach. She pressed her fingertips against the cold glass of the window. Outside New York went on. And inside the car, quietly without ceremony, Amelia Carter began the first hour of the rest of her life. But as the car turned uptown and the lights of the city surrounded her, she couldn't shake the thought pressing at the edges of her relief. She had escaped the man she knew, and now she was in a car with the man she didn't. She had traded the devil she recognized for the one who could read an entire ballroom from across the room, and had spent 2 years watching her former boyfriend, the way a hunter watches something he has not yet decided to move on. He had said, "I'm going to help you regardless." Regardless. She turned that word over in her mind, and she pressed her hand flat against the window and told herself, "You can survive anything. You already have." But for the first time since she had crossed that ballroom floor and kissed a stranger, she allowed herself to wonder whether she had made a decision, or whether she had simply exchanged one man's story for another. The answer, she realized, was not going to be found tonight. Tonight was only the beginning. And beginnings, even the ones that felt like escape, always carried the shadow of what came next. The penthouse was on the 43rd floor, and Amelia stood in the middle of it and tried not to let the size of it make her feel small. She had been in expensive spaces before. 2 years with Ryan had trained her to move through them without visibly reacting to accept marble countertops and floor-to-ceiling windows and artwork that cost more than most people made in a decade, as if they were ordinary. Ryan had used luxury the same way he used everything, as a statement of power, a constant reminder of what she had access to because of him, and therefore what she stood to lose. This felt different. She couldn't explain how exactly, only that it did. Damien's assistant, a compact, precise woman in her 40s named Helen, who appeared in the elevator lobby before they even reached the door, and did not seem surprised by any aspect of the situation, had taken her coat and asked if she wanted tea or something stronger. "Tea," Amelia said, and then, because she was honest, even when she didn't mean to be, actually something stronger. Helen had nodded without judgment and disappeared. Damien had excused himself to make a phone call, and Amelia had been left alone in the main room with a glass of whiskey she hadn't touched yet, and the particular kind of silence that exists 43 floors above a city that never stops making noise. She sat down on a couch that was probably worth more than her car and told herself to think clearly. She had left a charity gala with Damien Romano. Ryan knew. Ryan was going to respond to that knowledge in ways she could predict some of and not others. She knew the mechanics of him, the immediate controlled fury he would feel tonight, the way he would sit with it until it organized itself into something tactical. Ryan did not make moves when he was emotional. That was one of the things that made him so frightening. He waited until he was cold. And when he moved like something that had already decided the outcome. The whiskey glass was in her hand without her entirely deciding to pick it up. She took a sip. Her phone buzzed. She looked at it. 12 messages from Ryan. The first 6 were in the voice he used when he was controlling himself, measured reasonable, the language of a concerned partner. "I'm worried about you. Please tell me you're safe. Whatever I did to upset you, we can talk about it." The 7th was longer. The 8th was where the mask started coming apart at the edges, the sentences getting shorter, the punctuation harder. By the 12th, he had circled back to something closer to the first 6, which was somehow worse. He had caught himself. He had corrected his own course. He was already managing the narrative. She put the phone face down on the cushion beside her. "He's already messaging you." She looked up. Damien had come back into the room, his jacket gone, now his phone in his hand, and she noticed for the first time that he looked tired. Not weak. Nothing about him suggested weakness, but there was something in the lines around his eyes that had not been visible in the ballroom, something that came out in private. 12 times in 20 minutes, she said. "Show me." She hesitated. "You don't have to," he said. "But if you do, I can tell you what his next move is before he makes it." She held out the phone. He read through the messages standing up, and she watched his face the way she had gotten good at watching faces, looking for the information behind the expression, the thing a person was actually feeling underneath what they chose to show. His face gave her very little. But his jaw tightened on the 8th message. And that small, involuntary thing told her more than anything else. He handed the phone back. "He's going to try your sister first," he said. She stared at him. "What? That's the move. He can't come here tonight. He knows where this building is, and he knows who I am, and he's not stupid enough to make a scene at my address." He sat down across from her. "So he goes to the people you trust. He gets there first. He tells your sister his version before you can tell yours. By morning, your family is worried about you and calling your mental stability into question, and Ryan looks like the heartbroken, bewildered partner who has no idea what happened." She felt something go cold in her stomach. "Melissa," she said, "your sister. She doesn't know I've never told her." She was already reaching for her phone. "I need to call her." "You need to call her right now," he agreed. "Before he does." Bombed. Melissa answered on the second ring, which meant she was still awake, which meant she was probably already worried, which meant Ryan had either already called or was in the process of calling. "Amelia." Her sister's voice carried a particular quality, careful, slightly elevated, the voice of someone who had been told something and was trying not to say so. "Where are you? Are you okay?" There it was. "He already called you," Amelia said. A pause. 3 seconds. "Ryan called about an hour ago. He said you left the event with Amelia. What's going on? He said you were upset, and you left with some man, and he's really worried about—" "Melissa." She made her voice as steady as she could. "I need you to listen to me. I need you to listen to me. I need you to actually hear me, not hear me through what Ryan already told you. Can you do that?" Another pause, longer this time. "Yes," Melissa said, but she said it the way people say yes when they mean "I'll try." Amelia closed her eyes. She had rehearsed this conversation in her head more times than she could count. The conversation where she told her sister the truth. She had never been able to find the right words, the right order, the right way to say it that wouldn't immediately collide with 2 years of Ryan's careful reputation management. He had spent 2 years being charming, attentive, and visibly devoted at every family event. He had spent 2 years making Melissa laugh and bringing wine to Christmas dinners and saying things about Amelia with such tender affection that her mother had once grabbed Amelia's arm and whispered, "Don't you dare lose that man." She had 14 months of bruises on her body, and she had never told her sister. "He hits me," she said. Just that. No preamble, no softening, no context first. Silence. "Melissa." "I'm here." Her sister's voice had changed. Say that again. Not always. Not the way you're picturing. He's very careful. It's usually grabbing, pushing. He knows where to put his hands, and how hard to press, and what will and won't leave marks that are visible in short sleeves." She could hear herself speaking, and she sounded so terrifyingly even. And she knew it was because she had dissociated from her own story so many times that she could narrate it from a distance. "He controls my money, my phone, my email. I haven't made a decision for myself in 2 years. I haven't had a conversation he didn't know about. Tonight I found a way out and I took it." "Who is this man you left with?" "His name is Damian Romano." "Amelia." And now Melissa's voice had a different quality, not disbelief but fear. "Do you know who that is?" "Yes." "That man is people say he's—" "I know what people say." She looked across the room at Damian, who was giving her the privacy of looking somewhere else. "He's not what Ryan says he is, and Ryan is not what you think he is. I need you to believe me." The silence stretched. "You have bruises," Melissa said finally. "Yes." "Right now, on your body right now." "Yes." She heard her sister exhale long and slow and shaking at the edges. And then she heard something she had not heard from anyone in 2 years. She heard Melissa start to cry. Not dramatically, quietly. The small, compressed sound of someone absorbing something they cannot unfeel. "Why didn't you tell me?" Melissa said. "Because he was always there," Amelia said. "Because I was never alone long enough to find the words. Because I knew he would explain it, and people would believe him, and then I would be the unstable girlfriend who made things up, and he would be the patient man who loved her anyway. She pressed her fingers against her forehead. He already called you. That's exactly what he said, isn't it? That he's worried. That I've been struggling. The silence confirmed it. Don't talk to him again tonight, Amelia said. Please. Whatever he says, whatever story he has, just don't. Give me until morning. Give me until morning to explain everything and then decide what you believe. Amelia. Melissa's voice had steadied. I already believe you. 3 words. She had gotten those 3 words twice tonight from 2 different people, and both times they had hit her somewhere so deep she felt it in her ribs. Don't let him in if he shows up, Amelia said. And Melissa, don't post anything. Don't text anyone. He monitors things. He has people. He has people. Melissa's voice went somewhere between scared and furious. I'll explain everything tomorrow. I love you. Don't open the door. She hung up. Her hands were not entirely steady. She believed you, Damien said. He had not been pretending not to listen. He had simply been giving her the dignity of not watching her do it. Yes. Amelia set the phone down. Ryan got to her first, but he wasn't far enough ahead. He'll try others. My parents next probably. Or my friend Claire. He's had dinner at Claire's house. He spent 3 hours convincing Claire's husband what a great guy he is. She reached for the whiskey glass again. He's been building his witness list for 2 years. I just never understood that's what he was doing. That's how it works, Damien said. It was not a platitude, not an attempt at comfort. He was speaking from somewhere factual and specific. Isolation, reputation, management, financial control. In that order usually. It's a system. It's not passion. It's not even cruelty for its own sake. It's a system for ensuring that when the target finally leaves, nobody believes them. She looked at him. You know this very specifically, she said. Yes. Not just from watching people. He was quiet for a moment. No, he said. Not just from watching people. She didn't push. He had already offered her his mother in 2 words at the gala. She understood that was not nothing. She understood that some histories were not offered in full, especially not to strangers in the first hours of knowing them. What happens tomorrow? She asked. Tomorrow we start getting your things. He's not going to just let me walk into the apartment and take my belongings. No, Damien said. He's not. So we're going to approach this very differently from how you've tried to leave before. Something about the word "we" settled in her chest in a way she didn't entirely trust. She had learned the hard way what we meant when a man said it. It could mean partnership. It could mean my plan, your cooperation. I want to be clear about something, she said. He waited. I am grateful for tonight, she said. I am genuinely, completely grateful for what you did at that gala, and for bringing me here, and for keeping Ryan from getting his hands on me in front of 400 people. That was, I don't have language for what that was. She held his gaze. But I need to make my own decisions. About what happens next, about what I take from the apartment, about who I call and what I say, and how this goes. I cannot trade one person making all my choices for another person making all my choices, even if the second person has better intentions. Damien looked at her for a long moment. Understood, he said. That's it, she said. No explanation of why you know better. No gentle suggestion that I'm not in the best state to be making decisions right now. That's it, he said. She exhaled. Ryan would have spent 45 minutes explaining why my concern was understandable but misplaced, she said. I'm not Ryan, Damien said. No, she said. You're not. Helen reappeared at 10:30 to ask if Amelia needed anything for the night. There was a guest room. There were clothes. Helen produced this information with the calm efficiency of someone who had arranged unexpected overnight guests before and did not find it worth remarking on. Toiletries. A phone charger that would fit her model. Amelia accepted everything without asking questions she wasn't sure she wanted the answers to. The guest room was smaller than the main room, but still larger than any room in her apartment. She sat on the edge of the bed and looked at her phone. Ryan had sent 4 more messages since she'd spoken to Melissa. The tone had shifted again. He had moved past the concerned partner register and into something raw, and she could see the effort it was costing him to keep his language controlled. He was furious. He was frightened not of her, she understood, but of losing the structure he had built, losing the story, losing the version of events in which he was the reasonable one and she was the problem. She read all 4 messages. Then she did something she had never done before. She blocked his number. Her hands were shaking when she did it, and she pressed them flat on her thighs and breathed until they stopped. She had almost blocked him 100 times. She had gotten to this exact screen, his contact the block button, and closed the phone 100 times because she knew the cost, because she had learned what blocking him led to, because the last time she had tried to cut off his access, he had shown up at her workplace and made a scene that was simultaneously distressing and completely explainable to every person who witnessed it. But she was 43 floors up in someone else's building. And for the first time in 2 years, he could not get to her tonight. She hit block. She put the phone face down on the nightstand. She lay back on the bed in her gala dress and her heels and stared at the ceiling and waited to feel relieved or free or something that resembled either of those things. What she felt instead was terrified, not of Damien, not of this room or this building, terrified of the scale of what she had done, terrified of tomorrow when the adrenaline of tonight would be gone and she would have to look at her life without Ryan's structure around it and figure out what was left. Terrified of Ryan's next move, which she could not fully predict because he had surprised her before, and the most dangerous version of Ryan Mitchell was the one she hadn't anticipated. She heard a knock at the door. Soft. 2 knocks. "You don't have to answer," Damien's voice said through the door. She got up and opened it. He was holding a cup of tea she hadn't asked for, and wearing an expression that was less composed than the one he'd had in the ballroom. Not soft exactly, but real in a way that was different from the version he showed in public. "I couldn't sleep either," he said. She stepped aside and let him in. They sat across from each other, with the tea getting cold between them, and she asked him about his mother. She asked because she needed to understand who she had put her trust in, and because the way he had said those 2 words at the gala, "My mother," had carried a weight that she recognized. It was the weight of something that had shaped a person so fundamentally that they couldn't discuss it without feeling the shape of it. He told her. Not everything she understood there were parts he didn't offer, not because he was hiding them, but because they weren't hers yet. They were still being processed into something he could hand over without coming apart. But he told her the broad lines of it. His mother had been 19 when she married his father. His father was 28 and already moving in circles that required him to be one thing in public and another thing in private. His mother had endured 5 years before a woman, a neighbor, someone who barely knew her, had looked at her in a parking lot one afternoon and said simply, "I see you, and I know someone who can help." That neighbor had been the reason his mother got out. That neighbor had been the reason Damien Romano existed in the world as a man who was not his father. "She runs a foundation now," he said, "for women in exactly the situation she was in. She doesn't publicize it. She doesn't want her name on buildings. She funds shelters. She funds legal resources. She funds the kind of quiet infrastructure that makes it possible for women to leave without being found." He was quiet for a moment. "She asked me once what I wanted to do with all the money I was making. I told her I wanted to make sure nobody could touch what we'd built. She said that was the right answer." Amelia looked at him for a long time. "The shelters," she said. "Yes. That's where my money goes, some of it." "Yes. You were watching Ryan Mitchell for 2 years because of pattern behavior, not because of me." She thought about it. "But you knew women had made complaints. You knew about the settlement agreements." "Yes. Why didn't you do something?" she said. And then she heard herself say it, and heard how it sounded accusatory, simple. The kind of question that didn't account for the complicated reality of how power and privacy and legal agreements actually worked. "I'm sorry. That's not fair." "It's a fair question," he said. "I've asked it to myself. The honest answer is that the women who settled had the right to settle. They made choices under enormous pressure, and I respect those choices even when I wish they'd had different options. I could have gone after Ryan in the business arena. I was building that case. But moving too fast without enough support can destroy the case entirely and leave the person you're trying to help more exposed than before." "So you were waiting." "I was preparing," he said. She absorbed that. "And tonight changed the timeline," she said. "Tonight changed everything," he said. She fell asleep eventually, still in her dress with the lights of the city coming through the curtains and the sound of nothing. No footsteps she had to decode, no tension in the walls, no waiting for the other shoe to drop. She slept for 4 hours. She woke up at 5:15 in the morning with the particular clarity that sometimes comes after crisis. The adrenaline gone, the mind suddenly working with a sharp, cold precision. She lay still in the dark, and she thought. She thought about everything she knew about Ryan, everything he would do, everything he would try, the order he would try it in. She thought about what she needed and where it was and how she was going to get it. She got up, found a notepad in the nightstand drawer, and started writing. By 6:30, she had 3 pages of notes. A list of everything she needed from the apartment, prioritized by what could not be replaced. A list of people Ryan would contact, and roughly what he would say to each of them. A list of the things she knew about his business practices, the things she had witnessed over 2 years. The documents she had seen, the conversations she had overheard and filed away, with the instinct of someone who had learned to keep records in their head, because keeping them anywhere else was too dangerous. She was looking at that 3rd list when she heard movement in the main room. She came out of the guest room with her notepad. Damien was already up, already dressed, standing at the kitchen counter with coffee and his own phone in his hand. He looked at the notepad. "You've been awake for a while," he said. "I made a list," she said. He reached for the notepad. She handed it to him and watched him read through all 3 pages. His expression did not change much as he read, but she saw the moment he reached the 3rd list, the business practices list, because he went very still. "Where did you get this?" he said. 2 years, she said. "I saw things. I heard things. I was never allowed to discuss his business, but he talked about it in front of me constantly because he thought I wasn't paying attention. He underestimated you. Consistently," she said. Damien set the notepad down. He looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite name, something like reassessment. Something like the particular kind of respect that exists between 2 people who have figured out that the other one is more capable than they initially appeared. "This 3rd list," he said. "If even a third of this is documented and verifiable, Ryan Mitchell is not just losing his relationship. He's going to lose considerably more than that." "I know," she said. "How long have you been sitting on this?" She looked at him steadily. "Since month 3, she said. "I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know who to trust. I didn't know if it would be enough or if he'd explain it away the same way he explained everything else." She picked up her coffee cup from the counter. "But I kept it. Up here." She touched her temple. "All of it." He looked at her for a moment. "What?" she said. "Nothing." He reached for his own coffee. "Only that I had you wrong." "Wrong how?" "I thought I was bringing someone to safety," he said. "I'm starting to understand I brought an asset." She blinked at him. And then for the first time since the gala, for the first time in longer than that, really, she laughed. A real laugh, not performed, not calculated, just the involuntary sound of something catching her genuinely off guard. "An asset," she said. "Poor choice of words," he said, and he almost looked embarrassed, which was the most human expression she had seen on his face since the car. "No," she said, and she was still smiling, which felt strange on her face but not wrong. No, I think I'll take that one. By 8 in the morning, Damien had two lawyers on a call, a security consultant named Marcus, who appeared in person at 8:15 and shook Amelia's hand with the brisk, impersonal efficiency of someone who assessed and cataloged people in seconds, and a plan that was considerably more sophisticated than anything Amelia had managed in her 3 previous attempts to leave. Marcus had a background in extraction, not the dramatic kind he explained, but the practical kind. Helping people retrieve belongings from situations where the other party was likely to use presence and intimidation to prevent it. He had done it for corporations removing key personnel from hostile situations. He had done it for families. He had done it quietly and without billing them for women whose names he did not share. "The apartment," Amelia said. "Ryan will have changed the locks." "He hasn't yet," Marcus said. "I checked an hour ago." She looked at him. "How did you—" "I have access to building management records," Marcus said simply in the tone of someone who did not feel the need to elaborate on methodologies. "There's also a doorman," she said. "Carlos. Ryan pays him to report things." Marcus made a note. "We'll go through the service entrance. You'll have 45 minutes in the apartment. My team will pack. You point and they box. Everything on your list gets out. Anything contested, anything Ryan tries to claim is jointly owned, we photograph and document before removing. That way there's no question later." "He's going to call the police," she said. "He might," Marcus said. "If he does, you call me immediately. You say nothing, you do nothing, you don't engage with Ryan directly. His lawyers will call our lawyers, and that conversation will resolve itself without you in the room." She had never had our lawyers in her life. The concept of it was slightly dizzying. "When?" she said. 10 o'clock, Marcus said. "He'll be on calls until noon on Wednesdays. Business routine." She stared at him. "You've already been watching him," she said. "We've been building a profile since 6 this morning," Marcus said with no particular effect. "It's what we do." She looked at Damien across the table. Damien shrugged very slightly, the way a person shrugs when something is true and does not require defense. She stood in the apartment at 10:17 on a Wednesday morning and tried not to feel the things the walls were trying to make her feel. Marcus's team moved through it efficiently and quietly. 3 people, black cargo pants, no logo boxing things, with the focused speed of a practiced operation. She directed them with her list: laptop, external drives, portfolio boxes from the closet. The folder of client contracts in the bottom desk drawer that Ryan had told her more than once were not really hers to keep because he had made the introductions. She took them anyway. She went into the bedroom and opened the top drawer of her nightstand and found the one thing she had hidden in the apartment, a USB drive, small and black, taped to the underside of the drawer. She pulled it off and put it in her pocket. She had not told Damien about the USB drive. She had not told anyone. It had been there for 14 months. It contained copies of emails she had screenshotted on the few occasions Ryan had forgotten to log out of his work accounts on their shared computer. It contained voice recordings she had made on an old second phone she had bought cash on 3 separate occasions when Ryan's control had slipped enough for her to capture it. It contained one video. She did not look around the apartment. She did not let herself process the 26 months of her life embedded in these walls. She walked out. The service elevator took her down. Marcus was waiting in the lobby with a logistics problem on his face. "Ryan's car is outside," he said quietly. She did not let herself react. "Is he in it?" she said. "Driver. Ryan is not in the vehicle. He may have sent someone to watch. Or he came himself and parked elsewhere." Marcus touched his earpiece, listened. "Northeast corner," he said. "Coffee shop." She understood. Ryan was across the street, in the coffee shop. He was watching the building entrance, the front entrance, not the service entrance. He had not known about the service entrance because he had never had reason to think she would need to know about it. "He's going to see the van," she said. "He's not going to recognize the van," Marcus said. "It's a general moving company. He might assume a neighbor is moving." He might not. 30 seconds and we're loaded, Marcus said. Can you stay calm for 30 seconds? She looked at him. I have been staying calm in front of that man for 2 years, she said. I think I can manage 30 seconds. Marcus almost smiled. Almost. The van pulled out at 10:41. She sat in the back of it, surrounded by boxes that contained the pieces of her life, and she pressed the USB drive between her thumb and forefinger and thought about what it contained and what it meant and what she was going to do with it. She thought about Ryan sitting in that coffee shop, watching the front entrance of a building his girlfriend had just left through the back, and for the first time she felt something that was not fear. It was something smaller and sharper and considerably more dangerous. It felt, she realized, like the beginning of anger. Real anger. Not the trapped, helpless, turned inward anger of someone who has nowhere to put it. The outward kind. The kind that has direction and purpose and somewhere to go. She pressed the drive in her hand and said nothing, and let the anger settle into her, the way something that belongs to you settles like a key, fitting a lock that has been waiting for it. Outside the van, the city moved past. Ryan Mitchell sat in a coffee shop watching an empty door, and Amelia Carter sat in the back of an unmarked van with 2 years of his secrets in her pocket, and began very quietly to think about what came next. The USB drive sat on the kitchen counter between them like a small black detonator. Amelia had put it there without explanation when they got back, just set it down next to the coffee cups and waited to see what Damien would do. He had looked at it, looked at her, and then looked at it again with the expression of a man who was recalculating something he thought he'd already figured out. "You didn't tell me about that," he said. "No," she said. "How long have you had it?" 14 months. He was quiet for a moment. The kind of quiet that was not empty, but full. Full of things being sorted, assessed, filed. "What's on it?" "Emails I shouldn't have seen. 3 recordings. 1 video." She wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. "The video is the one that matters." "What does it show?" She met his eyes. "Ryan, in our kitchen. On a night he thought I had taken a sleeping pill." She held his gaze steady. "I hadn't." The silence in the room changed quality. "He didn't know you were recording," Damien said. "He never knew about the phone," she said. "I bought it with cash from a client tip. I kept it in a box of tampons under the bathroom sink because he went through everything except that." Damien looked at the drive for another long moment. Then he looked at her with something that was not pity and not admiration exactly, but lived in the territory between them, the particular recognition of someone who understood what it cost to survive intelligently inside an impossible situation. "We need to get this to my legal team today," he said. "I know," she said, "but I want to be in the room when they see it." "Of course, and I want to understand exactly what happens next before anyone else does anything. No moves without my knowledge. No filings, no calls, no contact with Ryan's people without me knowing first." "Agreed," he said. She nodded. Then she picked up the drive and turned it over in her fingers, once the way you turn over something you've been carrying for a long time and are only now allowing yourself to look at directly. "I used to take it out and look at it at night," she said. "When he was asleep, I'd sit in the bathroom with the door locked and hold it and remind myself that it existed, that I had something real, something he couldn't explain away." She set it back down. "It kept me going on the nights when nothing else did." Damien said nothing. He did not try to fill the space with comfort or commentary. He simply let the truth of what she'd said exist in the room without rushing to resolve it, and that restraint, that particular unusual restraint, told her more about him than anything he had said since the gala. She pushed the drive across the counter toward him. "Let's go," she said. The law office was on the 31st floor of a building in Midtown that had the particular atmosphere of a place where serious things happened quietly. No lobby art, no decorative plants. The kind of space that communicated through its own austerity that the people who worked here were not interested in impressing you with aesthetics, only with outcomes. Damien's attorney was a woman named Patricia Howe, 62 years old, silver-haired, wearing the expression of someone who had heard everything and could not be shocked by any of it. She shook Amelia's hand first before Damien's, and Amelia filed that away as information. There was a second attorney in the room, a younger woman named Sophia who handled forensic document review. Patricia explained, and who would be working with the drive. Amelia sat down. She had expected to feel something when she put the drive in Sophia's hand. Relief maybe, or the anxiety of relinquishing control of the only concrete evidence she had. What she felt instead was something quieter. Like setting down a weight she had been carrying so long it had started to feel like part of her body. "Walk me through what's on this," Patricia said. Amelia walked her through it. The emails, the dates, the context for each one, the 3 recordings, what had preceded them, what Ryan had said, what she had been responding to in each case. And then the video. When she described the video, Patricia set her pen down. "This is on the drive," Patricia said. "Yes." "Unedited." "I don't know how to edit video," Amelia said. "I'm a photographer. I know what I'm doing with a still image. Video I recorded and transferred and never touched." Patricia looked at Sophia. Sophia plugged the drive into a laptop. The room went quiet in the particular way rooms go quiet when everyone in them knows they are about to see something that cannot be unseen. Amelia did not look at the screen. She had seen it. She had watched it once in the bathroom at 3 in the morning 14 months ago, and she had sat on the cold tile floor afterward for a long time and not cried. She had moved past crying by then, just sat there and understood with cold, clear certainty that she was never going to use the word accident again about what was happening to her. She watched Patricia's face instead. Patricia's face, which had the weathered composure of a woman who had spent decades in difficult rooms, went through 3 separate things in the 90 seconds she watched the screen. A tightening around the eyes. A stillness of the jaw. And then, something that settled into it. Not anger exactly, but the professional cousin of anger. The kind that translates directly into action. "Stop it there," Patricia said to Sophia. Sophia stopped it. Patricia wrote something on her notepad. Then she looked at Amelia. "How did he not know you were awake?" Patricia said. "He gave me the pill himself," Amelia said. "He always watched me take it. I learned to hold it under my tongue and go to the bathroom 2 minutes later." Patricia wrote something else. "He drugged you," Sophia said from across the table. She said it quietly, not dramatically, but with the directness of someone who needed to name the thing accurately. "He had a narrative about my anxiety," Amelia said. "He'd convinced my doctor I needed help sleeping. He managed my prescription." "Your doctor prescribed the sedatives," Patricia said. "Yes, based on what Ryan told him about my symptoms I didn't have." Patricia leaned back in her chair. She folded her hands. She looked at Amelia with the careful attention of someone assembling a structure in their mind. "Ms. Carter," she said, "what is it that you want?" Amelia had thought about this in the van. She had been thinking about it since 5:15 that morning. "I want him to stop," she said. "Not just with me, permanently." The 3 women who settled, they settled because they had no option, because he had more resources than they did, and more time and more people convinced of his version of events. "I want that to change. You understand that going public with this material is going to be significant," Patricia said. "Not just for Ryan Mitchell, for you. Your name, your history, your relationship, it will all be visible. I know. The media will be involved. His attorneys will argue that the recording was obtained illegally, depending on which state." "I know," Amelia said. "I've had 14 months to think about the legal questions. I looked things up. New York is a one-party consent state for recordings. I was a party to every conversation on that drive." Patricia glanced at Damien. Damien looked at Amelia with the expression she was starting to recognize as his version of being impressed, which was not theatrical but was entirely legible once you knew to look for it. "I also have names," Amelia said. "Specific instances, specific dates. I have 2 years of a very detailed memory, because when someone controls your environment, you learn to keep records in your head. It's the only place they can't access. We'll need to get all of that on paper today, Patricia said. I know, Amelia said. I brought the notepad. They were in the conference room for 4 hours. Amelia talked and Sophia typed, and Patricia asked questions with the precision of a surgeon. The kind of questions that seemed simple, but were actually testing the structure of a story, checking it for weak points, finding the places where Ryan's counter-narrative could get purchase and reinforcing them with specificity and detail. By the end of it, Amelia's voice was raw, and her coffee had gone cold twice, and the notepad she'd brought was covered in Patricia's handwriting in addition to her own. Damien had sat at the far end of the table for most of it, not participating, but present. Twice, she had looked up and found him watching her with that particular focused attention, and both times something in her had steadied in a way she didn't fully understand, but had stopped questioning. When they finally broke, Patricia walked them to the elevator. His attorneys will contact us within 48 hours, Patricia said. Once he realizes you have representation at this level, he'll move fast. He's going to try to negotiate privately before this reaches any public forum. He'll offer money, Amelia said. He'll offer a great deal of money, Patricia said, and a non-disclosure agreement with very specific terms. I'm not signing anything, Amelia said. I know, Patricia said. That's why we need to be ready to move before he does. She looked at Amelia with the direct steadiness of a woman who did not cushion things unnecessarily. You should prepare yourself for the next 2 weeks to be extremely difficult. He's going to go after your reputation, your mental health history. He'll have records, or he'll create them, your professional standing, your family relationships. He's going to make you look unstable and untrustworthy to anyone who will listen. He's been doing that for 2 years, Amelia said. The difference is that now I have something to say back. Patricia nodded once. Something shifted in her expression, not warmth exactly, but its professional equivalent. Yes, she said. You do. End. Ryan's first move came not from Ryan. It came from a journalist. At 2:47 in the afternoon, Amelia's phone, her old number before she'd blocked Ryan, which meant he'd passed it along, received a call from a woman named Dana Chu, who identified herself as a reporter from a mid-sized digital news outlet, and said she was working on a story about Damian Romano's business practices and had received information suggesting that Amelia Carter was currently staying in Romano's residence and wanted to ask a few questions. Amelia put the phone on speaker. Damian looked at it with an expression that told her he had expected something like this. Maybe not this specific thing, but something that moved in this direction. What information? Amelia said. I've been told that you left a charity event last night with Mr. Romano, under circumstances that some witnesses found concerning, the reporter said, and that your boyfriend Ryan Mitchell is worried about your welfare. My former boyfriend, Amelia said. A pause. I was told you and Mr. Mitchell are still. We are not, Amelia said. We have not been in a relationship since last night. Is there anything else? Ms. Carter, I want to give you the opportunity to comment before I'd like the name of the person who gave you my number, Amelia said. Another pause. Longer. I'm not able to share source. You don't have to, Amelia said. I already know. She looked at Damien. I don't have a comment at this time. If you publish anything defamatory, my attorneys will be in touch immediately. She ended the call. She put the phone down. He's moving faster than I expected, she said. He's scared? Damien said. Scared people move fast. It's usually when they make mistakes. He doesn't make mistakes, she said. That's the problem. He made one last night, Damien said. He let you leave. She looked at him. He thought he could get you back, Damien said. He's controlled you for 2 years. In his experience, every time you've tried to leave, he's retrieved the situation. He assumed last night was the same, that you'd gone somewhere unfamiliar and uncomfortable, and you'd be ready to come back by morning. When you didn't come back, he didn't have a contingency. So the journalist is the contingency. The journalist is what he had to build overnight with no preparation. Damien said. It's reactive. It's not his best work. Don't underestimate him, she said, and she heard the edge in her own voice. I'm not, he said. I'm telling you that for the first time in 2 years he's playing from behind. That's different from saying he's not dangerous. She exhaled. Her phone buzzed again. A text from a number she didn't recognize. Amelia. I'm a friend of Claire's. She's really worried about you. Can you please just let us know you're okay? Ryan had gotten to Claire. She had expected it, had told Melissa it was coming, had made the list this morning that included Claire's name. But seeing it in real time, seeing the machinery of it working, the reach of it, the way he could turn her own people into unwitting instruments, made her stomach tighten with something old and familiar. She typed back, I'm fine. Please tell Claire to call me directly, not through intermediaries. She put the phone down. He's going to keep doing this, she said. Every person I've ever known. He's going to reach every single one of them before I can. Some of them, Damien said. Most of them, she said. He's had 2 years. I didn't realize what he was doing. I thought he was just being social, being friendly. He was building an army. Then we build ours faster, Damien said. I don't have an army. You have your sister, he said. You have the 3 women who settled. You have a drive with a video on it that Patricia called the most significant piece of evidence she's seen in a domestic case in 11 years. And you have me. She looked at him for a moment. Why does that last one bother me? She said. He looked back at her steadily. Because it should. You shouldn't trust people easily, especially right now. And yet here I am. And yet here you are. She shook her head slowly, not at him. At the whole thing, the strangeness of the last 18 hours, the particular improbability of this room and this conversation, and the fact that she was sitting across from Damien Romano, having something that felt like a genuine conversation about her life. Tell me something true about yourself, she said. Something that isn't about the situation. He looked at her with something that might have been surprise carefully maintained. Why? Because I need to know who you are when there's no crisis to manage, she said. And because you know almost everything about me at this point, and I know almost nothing about you. He was quiet for a moment. Not resisting the question, she could see him actually considering it, looking for something that was true, and also transferable, something he could hand over without it being either too much or too little. I read, he said. That's everyone, she said. At 4 a.m, he said. When I can't sleep, which is most nights. 19th century American literature. Things written before the age of irony, when writers still believed that sincerity was a virtue and not a liability. He paused. My COO thinks it's an affectation. My mother understands it. She thought about that. About what it meant that the man everyone called dangerous read 19th century literature in the small hours of the morning because sincerity felt like a virtue worth preserving. What are you reading right now? She asked. Edith Wharton, he said. The Custom of the Country. She almost smiled. She wrote about women who were trapped by the rules of their world and found ways to work around them. Yes, he said. She did. The call came at 4:30. Patricia, not Ryan's people. It was too soon for Ryan's people. Patricia calling to say that she had reached out to 2 of the 3 women who had settled with Ryan through the specific back channels that the legal world maintains for exactly this kind of contact, and that one of them, a woman named Diane Vasquez, had agreed to take a call. Amelia took it alone. Damien left the room without being asked, and she had registered that too in the growing ledger of things she was filing away about him. Diane Vasquez was 41 and had settled with Ryan 3 years ago. Her voice on the phone was measured and very quiet, the particular voice of someone who had agreed to this call after significant deliberation and had not fully settled their nerves. I saw him 2 months ago, Diane said after they had exchanged the brief, careful pleasantries of 2 strangers who shared something they had not chosen to share. At a function. He looked at me and smiled, and I left the building. I drove home, and I sat in my car for an hour before I could go inside. She paused. My therapist says that's progress. Amelia was very still. How long were you with him? She asked. 14 months, Diane said. I thought I was going crazy for most of it. He had this ability to make you feel like the problem was always inside you. Like you were fundamentally deficient in some way that he was generously tolerating. Yes, Amelia said. The settlement felt like relief at the time, Diane said. I had nothing left. No savings because we'd intertwined our finances, and he'd untangled them in a way that left me holding the debt. No references because everyone I'd worked with professionally had gone through him. I took the money and signed the document, and I told myself it was over. She breathed. It wasn't over. It's never over. He's still out there. I know, Amelia said. Your attorney said you have evidence, Diane said. Yes. The kind that wouldn't be easy to explain away. Yes. Diane was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice had changed, not louder, but firmer. The NDA has a clause, she said, a standard clause that most settlement agreements have. It specifies that the agreement is voided if the original party commits subsequent acts of the same nature, and those acts are part of a civil or criminal proceeding. She paused. My attorney flagged it when I signed. I've thought about it many times since. Amelia felt something change in the room around her. Are you telling me, she said carefully, that if Ryan is involved in a civil or criminal proceeding related to his conduct, your NDA is unenforceable? I'm telling you, Diane said, that you should ask your attorney that question. And I'm telling you that I have been carrying a box of documents under my bed for 3 years that I did not destroy after the settlement, even though I was supposed to. The silence on the line was very loud. I'm going to give you my attorney's direct number, Amelia said. Her name is Patricia Howe. I know the name, Diane said. Will you call her? A pause. 3 full seconds. Yes, Diane said. Damien was in the kitchen when she came out, and she stood in the doorway for a moment and just looked at him. This man she had known for less than 24 hours, who had moved into her crisis with the focused competence of someone who had been waiting for exactly this problem, and she tried to locate how she felt about that, and found that the answer was more complicated than gratitude and less complicated than suspicion, and lived somewhere in between. One of them is going to talk, she said. He turned. Diane Vasquez, she said. She has documents she kept after the settlement, and her NDA may have a voiding clause. She watched the calculation happen across his face, quick-layered the kind of thinking that happened in parallel rather than sequence. Patricia needs to know about the voiding clause immediately, he said. I already told her to expect Diane's call. Amelia moved into the kitchen. Ryan is going to find out she's talking, probably within 24 hours. Yes. Which means his next move is going to be bigger than a journalist. Yes, Damien said. What does bigger look like? She said. He was quiet for a moment. His attorneys file an emergency injunction claiming you took property that wasn't yours, he said. They try to force you to return the contents of the apartment and any materials you removed. It's not about the property. It's about getting a court appearance on record that they can use to paint you as unstable or litigious before your case has a chance to establish itself. She had not thought of that specific move. She absorbed it. Can they do that? She said. Can they get an injunction that quickly? His attorneys can try, Damien said. Patricia will block it, but it creates noise. It creates a news event. It gives Ryan a sympathetic framing the wronged partner trying to recover his property from a woman who ran off with another man. He looked at her steadily. He's going to use me, my reputation. The story of you leaving his event with someone like me is going to be the frame he puts everything inside. She had known this was coming. She had known it in the car last night, had felt the shape of it before she could name it. He's going to make me look like I traded up, she said. He's going to make you look like you orchestrated the whole evening, Damien said. The kiss leaving with me, the apartment retrieval, he'll say you planned it, that there was no abuse, that you manufactured a situation to exit the relationship with maximum damage to him. And some people will believe it, she said. Some people will believe it, he agreed, and she was grateful he didn't try to tell her otherwise. What about you? She said. What does he do to you? Damien leaned against the counter. He'll dig, he said. He has people who can dig. My business practices are not entirely without complexity. There are things I've done that are legal and also opaque, and opaque things look suspicious to people who are already primed to be suspicious. He said it flatly, without self-pity or deflection. He'll find the most ambiguous moments and he'll present them as something darker than they are. He'll try to make you the woman who fled an abusive man only to attach herself to a criminal. Are you, she said, a criminal? She asked it directly, the way she had learned to ask direct questions because indirect ones were too easy to manage. He looked at her for a long moment. I have operated in spaces where the line between legal and illegal was more of a gradient than a wall, he said. I have never hurt an innocent person for personal gain. I have helped people in ways that were not always sanctioned by official structures. I have enemies who would say things about me that are not true, and other enemies who would say things about me that are approximately true, but missing context. He held her gaze. I am not the man they'll say I am. I am also not entirely the man you've seen in the last 24 hours. What's the rest of it? She said. The rest of it, he said, is something I'd like to earn the right to tell you. When we're not in the middle of this. She held his gaze. That's a fair answer, she said. Ryan's attorney contacted Patricia at 5:58 in the evening. Not about an injunction. About a press release. Ryan Mitchell was going public. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, a prepared statement to 3 major outlets simultaneously. The statement described in carefully legal language Ryan's concern for Amelia's mental health, his grief at the breakdown of their relationship, his distress at finding her in the company of a man with a documented history of association with criminal enterprises, and his commitment to her well-being regardless of her choices. It made no accusations. It made no threats. It made Ryan Mitchell sound like a heartbroken, worried man. Patricia read it aloud over the phone, her voice carrying the particular flatness of someone delivering bad news with professional composure, and Amelia sat across from Damien in the kitchen and listened to Ryan's version of events being constructed in real time, each word chosen with the precision of someone who had done this before and knew exactly where to put the blade. When Patricia finished, the line was quiet for a moment. He mentions you by name, Patricia said to Damien, who was on the call. 3 times. He references documented criminal associations, which his team will know will challenge, but the phrase will be in circulation before we can. When does our response need to go out? Damien said. If we want to get ahead of his 9 o'clock. Tonight, Amelia said. Both of them looked at her. We respond tonight, she said. We don't wait for his press release. We don't let him set the terms of the story. We respond now before he publishes, and we make his press release look like a reaction instead of an opening move. Patricia was quiet for a moment. That's aggressive. Yes, Amelia said. Are you prepared for the level of visibility that creates? Patricia said. Once you respond publicly, there's no step back from this. You become the story. Your name, your face, your history. All of it becomes part of the news cycle. Amelia thought about the bathroom floor, about 14 months of a USB drive under the bathroom sink, about Diane Vasquez sitting in her car for an hour outside her own house because she had seen Ryan's face at a function. Write the statement, she said. I'll tell you what to put in it. The statement went out at 8:47 in the evening. It was 260 words. It contained no attack on Ryan, no counter-accusation, no language that could be categorized as dramatic or vindictive. It simply stated in clean, unambiguous prose that Amelia Carter had left a relationship that she described as emotionally and physically abusive, that she was currently safe, that she had legal representation, and that she had documentation which she intended to make available through appropriate channels. It was the last 2 sentences that did the most work. Ms. Carter wishes to make clear that she is not the first person to have experienced this situation with Mr. Mitchell, and that she has been in contact with others who share her experience. She intends to ensure that the full picture of her relationship with Mr. Mitchell is a matter of public record. No names, no specifics, no claims they couldn't support. Just the door standing open. Damien read it through once before it went out. He looked at Amelia. "You understand what this does," he said. "Yes," she said. "Every journalist in New York is going to be looking for the other women by tomorrow morning." "I know." "Ryan will know you've been in contact with at least one of them within hours." "I know," she said. "That's why I needed to do it before he got to set the story." She looked back at the statement on the screen. "He built 2 years of a story in which I'm unstable and he's blameless. I'm giving people a reason to look for a different story before his version calcifies." Damien looked at her for a long moment. "You should have been an attorney," he said. "I'm a photographer," she said. "We understand the difference between what you point the camera at and what you leave out of the frame." He looked at her, and there it was again, that thing she kept catching in his face. Not the mask he wore in the ballroom, not the executive efficiency of the last 24 hours. Something underneath both of those. Something that looked, she thought, like a man being genuinely surprised by another person for the first time in a while. She looked away first, not because she was uncomfortable, because she wasn't sure she trusted herself not to be. "What does he do now?" she said. Damien turned back to the screen. "Now," he said, "he realizes he is in a fight he did not prepare for." Her phone buzzed. She looked at it. An unknown number. A text. "You have no idea what you just started. You think one statement changes anything. You think he's going to let you do this." She read it twice. Then she put the phone down and looked at Damien. "It's not Ryan," she said. "Ryan would never write something that uncontrolled." "No," Damien agreed. "Ryan wouldn't." He reached across and turned the phone toward him to read the message. Something shifted in his face. "That's not someone acting on his behalf officially. That's someone personal. He has people who are loyal to him," she said. "People he's cultivated. People he's done favors for." She paused. "I just didn't expect them to contact me directly." "It's a test," Damien said. "He's checking whether you can be intimidated, whether the statement was real conviction or a bluff that collapses under pressure." She looked at the message again. "You have no idea what you just started." She picked up the phone and typed back 4 words. "Yes, I do. Watch." She hit send. Then she set the phone face down on the counter and looked at Damien Romano and waited for her hands to shake. They didn't. And that small, solid, entirely new fact was the thing that told her more clearly than anything that had happened since the gala that something fundamental had changed. She was not the same woman who had stood at a charity event 18 hours ago and made the most desperate decision of her life. She was still scared. She was still in the middle of something that had a long way to go before it resolved. Ryan Mitchell was still out there, already recalibrating, already building his next move with the cold precision that had always made him so formidable. But she had a USB drive that Patricia Howe had called the most significant piece of evidence she'd seen in 11 years. She had Diane Vasquez with a box of documents under her bed and a voiding clause in her NDA. She had a statement in public circulation that had already, in the 40 minutes since it went out, generated 4 media inquiries and 2 calls from organizations she had never contacted. And she had a man sitting across a kitchen counter from her who had read Edith Wharton at 4 in the morning and said, "I believe you," without flinching, and who was watching her now with the particular expression of someone who had prepared for one kind of night and found themselves in the middle of a different and considerably more interesting one. She reached across the counter and picked up her coffee. "Tell me about the business practices," she said. "The ambiguous ones. The ones Ryan's people are going to find." He raised his eyebrows by a fraction. "Right now," he said. "Right now," she said. "Because if it's going to become part of the story, I need to understand it before it's handed to me through someone else's frame." He held her gaze for a moment. Then he poured himself a coffee, sat down across from her, and began. He talked for 2 hours, not performing, not managing her impression of him the way she had watched Ryan manage every piece of information he ever released about himself. Damien talked the way a person talks when they have decided that honesty is the only viable option left, which meant he talked about things that did not reflect well on him, alongside the things that did, and he did not attempt to arrange the order of them to control the landing. He told her about the first 10 years. The years before the legitimate businesses, when he had moved in spaces that operated on the understanding that certain transactions required privacy that official channels could not provide. He had never trafficked anything that hurt people. He was emphatic about that, and she believed him, not because he said it emphatically, but because she had spent 2 years with a man who was very good at lying, and she had developed a sensitivity to the specific texture of an untruth. He had moved money. He had facilitated connections between people who could not be seen publicly connecting. He had operated in the gray latitude between legal and illegal that exists in every major city and is largely ignored until someone needs it to mean something. There are 3 transactions that Ryan's people will find, he said. 1 from 11 years ago, 1 from 8, 1 from 6. The first one is the most complex. The other 2 are defensible with context. The first one... He stopped. He looked at his coffee cup. The first one requires me to name a person who is still living and who I have not contacted in 11 years, and naming them has consequences for them that I don't have the right to decide unilaterally. Who is it? Amelia said. A woman, he said. A woman who needed to move a significant amount of money out of a situation that would have killed her if she'd gone through official channels. Her husband had connections inside the regulatory bodies that should have protected her. I moved the money. She got out. He paused. If that transaction is surfaced and examined, her name comes up, and the people she got away from are still looking for reasons to find her. Amelia looked at him for a long time. So the most damaging thing on your record, she said slowly, is a transaction you made to help a woman escape. That is correct, he said. The irony of that, she said, is not lost on me. He looked at her. Something moved between them across the kitchen counter, not quite a smile, not quite anything she had a name for, but real. An acknowledgement between 2 people who were in the same strange pressurized moment, and both understood exactly where they were. Patricia needs to know about those 3 transactions before Ryan's people surface them, Amelia said. Yes. And the woman, can she be warned, without naming her publicly? He nodded slowly. There are ways to alert her without creating a paper trail. Then do that tonight, Amelia said. Whatever we're dealing with, we don't solve it by leaving someone else exposed. He looked at her in the specific way she was starting to understand, as Damien processing something he hadn't expected. It happened every time she did something that didn't fit neatly into his existing category for her. She filed that away too. All right, he said. Dancing. She slept better the second night. Not well. She woke twice, once at 2 and once at 4, and lay in the dark and listened to the building, and waited for the particular tightness in her chest that had been her constant companion for 2 years, to tell her what to be afraid of. What she found instead was a different feeling, not peace exactly, but something adjacent to it. The feeling of a person who has finally stopped pretending and discovered that pretending was the heaviest part. At 4:15, she got up and went to the kitchen for water and found Damien at the counter with a book exactly as advertised. He looked up. Wharton, she said. Chapter 14, he said. She poured water and leaned against the opposite counter and didn't go back to bed. He didn't suggest she should. They were quiet in the kitchen at 4 in the morning with a book and a glass of water between them, and it was the most uncomplicated moment she had experienced in years, which was so strange she almost mentioned it and then didn't because some things were better left unnarrated. After a while, he said without looking up from the page, Your statement has been picked up by 6 outlets. I know, she said. I checked it too. He looked up then. You're handling this better than most people would, he said. I've been in crisis management mode for 2 years, she said. I'm just finally managing a crisis that's mine instead of one he created and handed me to deal with. He considered that. What do you want it to look like? He said. On the other side of this, when it's over. She thought about it honestly, not the automatic answer. I just want to be safe. I just want it to stop. But the real answer, the one she had been starting to form in the back of her mind since 5:15 yesterday morning. I want my studio, she said. A real one, not a corner of someone else's space. I want to shoot what I want to shoot. I spent 2 years taking photographs at events Ryan wanted me to attend, of people Ryan wanted documented in the aesthetic Ryan considered appropriate. She set her water glass down. I'm a good photographer. Before Ryan, people said I was a great one. I want to find out if that's still true. He was looking at her the way people look when they are listening completely, not waiting for a pause to respond, but actually receiving what is being said. It's still true, he said. You've never seen my work, she said. No, he said. But I've watched you operate under pressure for 36 hours, and you see things other people miss. That doesn't go away. She looked at him. You're doing it again, she said. What? Saying the thing that's unexpectedly human, she said. You do it at intervals. I'm trying to figure out if it's calculated. The corner of his mouth moved. It's not, he said. I know, she said. That's what makes it disarming. She pushed off the counter and went back to bed, and she lay there and stared at the ceiling, and thought about studios and photographs, and the version of herself that had existed before Ryan. And for the first time in 2 years, that version felt like something she might be able to reach again, rather than something already gone. Yeah. Ryan's press release went out at 9 o'clock exactly. Amelia read it with her coffee at the kitchen counter. Damien beside her reading his own copy on his phone. Patricia was on speaker between them, already responding to the 3 media requests she had received in the first 15 minutes. It was good. She had to give him that. Ryan's press release was a masterpiece of the form. It was concerned without being aggressive. It was specific enough to seem credible, but vague enough to avoid anything actionable. It referenced her documented struggles with anxiety and instability in language that would be easy to trace to the medical records Ryan had helped manipulate, but framed as loving concern rather than attack. It described Damien Romano, using 3 careful phrases that each implied criminal association without stating it, which meant the phrases were defensible in court, but devastating in a news cycle. And it ended with Ryan's direct quote, I love Amelia. I want her safe. I want her to get the help she needs. Nothing else matters to me right now. Amelia read that last line 3 times. She thought about the kitchen, the video, the phone she had hidden in a box of tampons for 14 months. He's very good, she said. Yes, Patricia said on speaker. It doesn't matter, Damien said. It does matter, Amelia said. Don't dismiss it. If we dismiss it, we're going to get hit by the parts we didn't take seriously. Damien looked at her, accepted the correction without resistance. You're right, he said. What do we do about the mental health framing? I call my doctor today, Amelia said. My actual doctor, not the one Ryan introduced me to. My doctor before Ryan, she's still in Brooklyn. I've had her since college. I request an independent evaluation, voluntarily, today. Patricia was quiet for a moment. That's aggressive. It preempts the narrative, Amelia said. He's going to push the mental instability angle because it's his strongest card. If I request an independent evaluation before he can suggest I need one, I take that card out of his hand. It also creates a record, Patricia said slowly. If the evaluation comes back clean, and presumably it will, Amelia said. Then we have documentation of her psychological stability from an independent medical professional dated before his team can bring their own evaluators in. Patricia paused. That's very smart. It also costs him his framing entirely, Damien said. He was looking at Amelia with the reassessment expression again. If you've voluntarily sought evaluation and come back clean, every mention of your instability reads as what it is, an attempt to discredit a witness. Call Dr. Reyes, Amelia said to herself as much as anyone. She'll fit me in. Dr. Reyes fit her in at 11. She was a small woman in her 60s, with reading glasses pushed up on her forehead, and the particular quality of attention that good therapists develop, not the performed empathy of someone acting interested, but the real thing. The actual presence of a person who had structured their entire life around listening carefully. Amelia had last seen her 3 years ago, 4 months before Ryan. She sat down in the familiar chair and looked at Dr. Reyes across the familiar desk and said, I need to tell you something, and then I need to ask you something. All right, Dr. Reyes said. She told her. 30 minutes of it. Not everything, there wasn't time for everything, but the shape of the 2 years. The control, the isolation, the hands on her wrist, the pill, the video, the USB drive, the gala, the kiss, the 43-floor penthouse, and the 4-hour legal session, and the statement that had gone out last night, and the press release she'd read this morning. Dr. Reyes did not interrupt. When Amelia finished, the room was quiet for a moment. The request, Dr. Reyes said. I need an independent psychological evaluation, Amelia said. Documented, dated today, from someone Ryan cannot claim is connected to my current situation. Because he's going to question your mental stability, Dr. Reyes said. He already has, publicly as of 9 o'clock this morning. Dr. Reyes took her glasses off her head and put them on properly and wrote something on the pad in front of her. I can arrange a colleague to conduct a formal evaluation today. Dr. Okafor at Columbia. He's fully independent, excellent credentials, no connection to you or to anyone in your current situation. Can it be done today? This afternoon, she said. I'll call him now. She looked at Amelia over her glasses. You've been very precise about all of this, very organized. Is that strange? Amelia said. For someone in a trauma response, yes, somewhat, Dr. Reyes said. Not in a pathological way. In the way of someone who has been waiting a long time to be able to act and has spent that time preparing. 14 months, Amelia said. And now you're acting, Dr. Reyes said. Yes. Dr. Reyes held her gaze for a moment. How are you, Amelia? She said. Not the clinical how are you, the human one. And Amelia, who had not let herself answer that question honestly in longer than she could accurately calculate, felt the back of her throat tighten in the specific way of tears she was not going to cry right now in this office today. I'm frightened, she said. And I'm angrier than I have ever been in my life. And underneath both of those things, there is something that I think might be relief if I let myself feel it. That sounds accurate, Dr. Reyes said. It also sounds exhausting, Amelia said. Recovery usually is, Dr. Reyes said, in the short term. She was back at the penthouse by 2 o'clock, with an appointment at Columbia at 4, and Dr. Reyes's direct line saved in her phone. Melissa was there. She had not known Melissa was coming. Damien had arranged it. She understood immediately, because Melissa was sitting in the main room with a coffee that Helen had clearly provided. And when Amelia walked in, her sister stood up from the couch so fast she almost knocked her own cup over. They did not say anything for a moment. And then Melissa crossed the room and put her arms around Amelia, and Amelia stood in her sister's embrace and felt 2 years of held breath start very slowly to release. I should have seen it, Melissa said into her hair. Her voice was tight and fractured at the edges. I should have. You couldn't have, Amelia said. He made sure you couldn't. I thought he was. Melissa pulled back, held her at arm's length. Looked at her, the way you look at someone you've been worried about for longer than you realized. He came to Christmas dinner. He brought wine. He told that story about the 2 of you in Italy, and everyone laughed, and I thought, I know, Amelia said. He was very good at the story about Italy. She had not been able to tell her sister at Christmas that the trip to Italy had been punishment for a conversation Ryan deemed too familiar with a male colleague that she had spent 4 days in a beautiful country in absolute silence because speaking had not been allowed until Ryan decided the lesson was sufficiently absorbed. It was a very good story. Melissa made a sound that was not quite a laugh and not quite a sob. "Tell me what I can do," she said. "You already did it," Amelia said. "You believed me." They sat down together on the couch, and Amelia told her sister the version that included the things she'd left out on the phone. Not everything. Not the video. Not the specific texture of the worst nights. But enough. Enough for Melissa to understand that what she was seeing was not a crisis in progress, but the resolution of one, and that the tears she was working to contain were not grief for Amelia's situation, but for the 2 years she had not known about it. By the time Damien came back into the room, she had noticed giving them space with the same instinct he'd shown everywhere else. Melissa had composed herself and was looking at him with the particular expression of a sibling doing a rapid comprehensive assessment. "You're the one she kissed," Melissa said. "Yes," Damien said. "At the gala." "Yes." Melissa looked at him for a long moment, with the full weight of a sister who had just absorbed 2 years of her sibling's suffering and was now looking at the man who had been the immediate trigger for its end. "Thank you," Melissa said. And then, because she was Amelia's sister, "Don't make me regret saying that." Something happened at the corner of Damien's mouth. "I'll do my best," he said. The Columbia evaluation took 3 hours. Dr. Okafor was 45, direct, methodical, and entirely unmoved by either the circumstances or Damien Romano's name, which told Amelia exactly what she needed to know about his independence. He asked questions, administered assessments, took notes, and at the end of it, looked at her across his desk with the even delivery of a man reporting data. "You present no indicators of delusional thinking instability or compromised cognitive function," he said. "You show clear markers of complex trauma consistent with long-term exposure to a controlling relationship. Your recall is precise, your narrative is internally consistent, and your current decision-making reflects appropriate strategic thinking under pressure." He paused. "In my professional opinion, the characterization of you as mentally unstable is not supported by any clinical evidence I can observe." She had known this was what it would say. She had been certain of it. Hearing it said aloud, documented by a credentialed stranger at a major medical institution, was something else entirely. She had spent 2 years being told she was unstable, being told she was anxious and confused and impulsive, and didn't think clearly. Ryan had said it so many times in so many ways, had arranged so much of her environment around the premise of her deficiency, that she had been fighting quietly constantly against the particular erosion that happens when someone you live with tells you a version of yourself that conflicts with the one inside your own head. She sat in the chair across from Dr. Okafor and said, "Thank you," in a voice that was entirely steady. She did not cry until she was in the elevator. 2 floors, 30 seconds. She let herself have those 30 seconds, and then she stopped, because she had things to do, and the cry could wait until there was space for it that didn't have a time constraint. Patricia called at 6. Ryan's attorneys had filed. Not the property injunction Damien had predicted, something more targeted. They had filed a request for an emergency protective order claiming that Damien Romano represented a danger to Amelia Carter and that Amelia was being held in his residence against her will. Amelia stared at the phone. "He's claiming I'm being held," she said. "It will be dismissed," Patricia said. "The filing is transparent. It's designed to generate a headline, not to succeed legally. But it does 2 things. It gives Ryan the narrative of trying to protect you, and it creates a public record that mentions Romano's name alongside the word danger before any of our filings reach the same level of visibility." "What do we do?" Amelia said. "You make a public statement about your current location and status," Patricia said. "Ideally, with your sister present. Ideally, video." She looked at Melissa, who was sitting across from her and had clearly heard enough of the call to understand the broad shape of it. Melissa looked back. "I'm here," Melissa said. "Whatever you need." Amelia put the phone down. She looked at Damien. He filed a protective order claiming I'm here against my will, she said. Damien's expression did not change significantly, but she had learned his face well enough in 48 hours to read the thing underneath the surface. The jaw, the stillness. He's desperate, Damien said. He's strategic, she corrected. Both, Damien said. Desperate strategy, the most dangerous kind. I need to do a video statement, she said. With Melissa, tonight. Use the main room, he said. The light is better. I thought you were going to tell me it's too risky. It's risky, he said. It's also the right move. You know your situation better than I do. She held his gaze for a moment. You keep doing that, she said. What? Letting me lead, she said. Men with your level of resources and instinct for control don't usually do that. I told you in the car, he said. You're not my possession. You said that, she said. You keep also proving it. That's the difference. She picked up her phone and called Patricia back. The video went up at 8:30. 90 seconds. Amelia Melissa beside her, clean and direct. She stated her name, confirmed she was at the residence, voluntarily confirmed she was represented by counsel, confirmed she had undergone an independent psychological evaluation that day, and stated clearly that the protective order filing was a misrepresentation of her situation. She did not mention Ryan by name. She did not have to. 37 seconds in, she held up the Columbia documentation. She just held it up. She did not read from it. She did not describe it. She just held it up and let it be seen, and then she put it down and finished the statement and thanked people for their concern. She had borrowed the idea from photographers. Sometimes you don't narrate the image. You just show it and trust the viewer. By 9 o'clock, the video had 40,000 views. By 10, it had 112,000. By 11:03, major news outlets had run it with full links, and the comment section of Ryan's morning press release had been closed down. Amelia sat on the couch and watched the numbers move on her sister's phone, because she had put her own phone down and did not trust herself to keep checking it. Your inbox is going to be impossible tomorrow, Melissa said. Patricia handles the press contacts, Amelia said. I mean, personally. People who want to... Melissa stopped. She was reading something on her phone, her expression shifting. Amelia. What? Melissa turned the phone around. A Twitter thread. Amelia still thought of it as Twitter from an account she didn't recognize. A woman named Sarah P. Anonymous, except for her first name and an initial. A thread that had been posted 40 minutes ago and was already at 60,000 engagements. Seeing the coverage about Amelia Carter tonight. I was never going to speak publicly. I signed a document that told me I couldn't. But I'm a lawyer, and I know what voiding clauses are, and I'm reading the news right now, and I think it's time. My name is Sarah. I am the second woman. Here is what I know. Amelia read the thread. She read it without moving, without speaking. Melissa sitting beside her, reading the same screen over her shoulder. Sarah was 38. She had been with Ryan for 16 months 4 years ago. The thread was precise, specific, and devastating in the particular way of someone who had said nothing for 4 years and had chosen this exact moment to say everything. She named dates. She named incidents. She described the settlement negotiation in terms that were legal and specific enough to suggest she had indeed been a lawyer before she encountered Ryan Mitchell and had been using those skills every day since to understand what had happened to her. She did not post the settlement amount. She posted the clause. The specific language of the voiding provision of her NDA, which she had photographed on the day she signed it and kept in a file she had updated every time she heard Ryan's name in the news. The clause was identical to the one Diane Vasquez had referenced. Same language, same attorney, same document template, which meant Ryan Mitchell's legal team had been using the same NDA template for multiple settlement agreements spanning at least 4 years, with the same voiding clause embedded in each one, which meant every agreement he had used to silence every woman who came before Amelia was potentially void the moment a civil or criminal proceeding was initiated. Patricia, Amelia said. Melissa was already handing her the phone. she called. Patricia picked up on the first ring, which meant she was already awake, which meant she had already seen it. "I know," Patricia said. "The clause is identical," Patricia said. "I've already pulled Diane's document. I'm having someone pull every public settlement record associated with his attorneys for the last 5 years tonight." She paused. "This changes everything, Amelia. If there are 3 settlement agreements with identical language and a voiding clause—" "He thought he was being protected," Amelia said. "He thought the NDAs meant the women couldn't talk. He never thought about what happens if the clause gets triggered." "He didn't think he was ever going to be in a proceeding," Patricia said. "He thought he was untouchable." The word settled in the room. Untouchable. Ryan Mitchell, who had spent years constructing a reality in which he was the reasonable one, and his partners were the fragile ones in which he had explanation for everything and evidence against nothing, in which the very structure of his settlements guaranteed that the people who could hurt him most were legally bound to silence. He had built a fortress, and the door had been open the entire time. "File tomorrow," Amelia said. "Civil action," Patricia said. "Civil action," Amelia said. "Everything we have. The video, the recordings, the emails, the medical records, the independent evaluation, my testimony. And Diane, and whatever Sarah will offer." She paused. "File everything." Patricia was quiet for exactly 4 seconds. "It's going to be a war," she said. "Yes," Amelia said. "He has more resources." "He had more resources when I had nothing," Amelia said. "What does he have now?" Patricia did not answer immediately, because the answer was clear and they both knew it. Ryan Mitchell, as of this moment, had a press release that had been publicly countered, a protective order filing that had been publicly dismantled, an NDA structure that was potentially void across multiple prior settlements. A video on a USB drive that Patricia had called the most significant evidence she'd seen in 11 years. And a woman who had spent 14 months preparing for this moment, sitting in a law office at 11 at night, telling her to file everything. What Ryan Mitchell had right now was a narrative, and Amelia Carter was done letting him write it. "File tomorrow," she said again. 9 o'clock, Patricia said. After she hung up, the room was quiet. Melissa had fallen asleep on the couch. The emotional weight of the day had hit her at some point in the last hour, and she had simply been overcome by it in the way of someone who had been running on adrenaline and then stopped. Amelia took a blanket from the armchair and put it over her sister without waking her. She went to the kitchen. Damien was there. He had been giving them space all evening. She had been aware of his presence in the building, the way you are aware of something solid and reliable nearby, not intrusive, but there. And now, he was at the counter with water and his phone, and the particular stillness of a man who had been waiting to see how things went and had gotten his answer. "Patricia files tomorrow," she said. He nodded. "Sarah came forward," she said. "The second woman, on social media. She posted the voiding clause." He was quiet for a moment, processing. She watched him do it. "He's going to know by morning," Damien said. "Yes." "He's going to respond in a way we haven't seen yet," Damien said. "Everything until now has been reactive. Tomorrow he wakes up to a civil action filing 2 women on record and a voiding clause that potentially destroys every settlement agreement he's used as protection. He's going to move to something we haven't predicted." "I know," she said. "Are you scared?" She thought about it. Honestly, the way she had been trying to answer all questions honestly since the gala, because dishonesty required too much energy she couldn't afford. "Yes," she said. "But it's different from before. Before I was scared because I had no options. Now I'm scared because I have options, and I'm using them, and I don't know exactly how he's going to respond." She looked at her water glass. "That's a different kind of scared. It's the kind you can do something with." He looked at her for a long moment. "You should try to sleep," he said. "I know." She didn't move. "Damien?" "Yes." "After this is over." She looked up at him. The studio I mentioned. I'm going to open it. Whatever happens with all of this, the case Ryan, the media, all of it, I'm going to open a studio." He looked at her. "I know," he said. "I'm telling you because—" She stopped, found the right words. "Because you've seen me at my most tactical and my most frightened in the last 48 hours, and I want you to also know that those aren't the only things I am. I'm also the person who wants a studio and wants to shoot what she wants to shoot and wants to find out if she's still as good as she was before someone spent 2 years convincing her she wasn't." "I know that too," he said. "Then why do you look like I'm telling you something new?" she said. He was quiet for a moment. "Because," he said, "you're saying it to me directly, not working toward it, not calculating how I'll receive it, just saying it." She held his gaze. "I'm trying to be someone who says things directly," she said. "I was very good at it before Ryan. I'm trying to remember how." "You're doing fine," he said. She nodded, straightened, picked up her water glass. "Good night," she said. "Good night." She was halfway down the hall when he said her name. She stopped. "The studio," he said. "I know someone. Commercial space in Tribeca. The previous tenant left 6 months ago and the owner has been holding it." He paused. "If you want it, it's yours. No condition, no strings, just a space." She stood in the hallway for a moment. She thought about conditions and strings and what they looked like when they weren't visible. She thought about Ryan and the apartment and every beautiful thing he had put in front of her that turned out to be a wall. She turned around. "Tell me about the owner," she said. "Not the space, the owner. Who are they? What do they want? Why are they holding it?" He told her, directly, completely, without managing the information. She listened. "All right," she said when he was done. "I want to see it. After the filing. After Patricia has what she needs, and Ryan has been served, and the first wave has passed." She met his eyes. "Then I want to see it." He nodded. She went to bed. In the other room, her sister slept under a borrowed blanket, and somewhere across the city, Ryan Mitchell was reading Sarah's thread and calculating, and Patricia Howe was awake at a desk with a drive and a stack of documents and 9 o'clock in her sights. And Amelia Carter lay in the dark on the 43rd floor and thought about light and space and what she would photograph first when she had a room of her own to do it in. She fell asleep before she could finish the thought. And for the second night in a row, she did not dream about Ryan Mitchell at all. Patricia filed at 9 o'clock exactly. Amelia knew the moment it happened because her phone buzzed with a text from Patricia that said simply, "Filed." One word, no punctuation after it. The kind of message that doesn't need anything added because the weight of it is already complete. She was standing in the kitchen with her coffee when it came through. Melissa was at the counter beside her eating toast and pretending to be calmer than she was. Damien was across the room on his phone dealing with whatever his morning looked like when it wasn't occupied with her crisis, and she had been noticing in the last hour that he had a business that existed independently of all of this, calls, decisions, people waiting on him, and that he was managing it with the same low-key efficiency. He managed everything without making it visible or making her feel like she was in the way. She showed Melissa the text. Melissa set her toast down. "Okay," Melissa said, quietly. "Okay, it's real now." "It was real before," Amelia said. "I know, but now it has a file number." Melissa looked at her. "How do you feel?" Amelia considered it honestly, the way she'd been trying to do with all questions since the gala. "Like I jumped off something," she said. "And I haven't landed yet. But I jumped, and that part is done, and there's no climbing back up." Melissa reached over and put her hand over Amelia's on the counter. They stood like that for a moment, two sisters in a kitchen that belonged to neither of them, with a filed lawsuit between them and Ryan Mitchell, somewhere on the other side of the city, reading his morning alerts. Damien came over and refilled his coffee and looked at Amelia's phone. "Patricia will call within the hour," he said. "His attorneys will have been notified automatically." "And Ryan," Amelia said. "And Ryan." She picked up her coffee. "Tell me what he does first," she said. Damien was quiet for a moment. Not performing consideration, actually thinking, pulling on his knowledge of Ryan and men like Ryan and what they did when the walls they'd built started coming down. He calls his attorneys and tells them to file a counter, he said. They'll claim defamation. They'll claim the recordings are inadmissible. His team will argue New York one-party consent has exceptions when the recording party is in an induced state, which is an argument they can make, even knowing it's unlikely to succeed because the goal is delay, not victory. He paused. Then he calls the journalist, the one who called you yesterday. He gives her something new, something about me, something that shifts the story from him to me. What does he give her? Amelia said. The 11-year-old transaction, Damien said, or his version of it. She had thought about this. She had thought about it while she was falling asleep, and while she was waking up, and while she was standing in the shower this morning. You need to get ahead of it, she said. Yes. Which means you need to tell your version first. Yes. Which means naming the woman. He was quiet. This was the thing she had known was coming. She had seen it the way she saw things now, not with the flinching avoidance of someone trying not to look at hard things, but directly because she had stopped being able to afford the luxury of looking away. You said naming her has consequences for her, Amelia said. What kind of consequences specifically? Not in general. Specifically. He held her gaze. Her ex-husband has 2 ongoing legal matters in jurisdictions where the judge assigned to both cases has a documented relationship with his family, Damien said. Surfacing her name in a high-profile news cycle creates a public record that his attorneys could use to reopen the asset transfer question. The money she left with was legally hers. But legally hers and practically protected from challenge are not the same thing when the other party has judges. Amelia absorbed this. Can you protect her if her name comes out? She said. Financially, yes, he said. From the legal challenge. But I cannot protect her from the exposure itself. From having her name attached to this story. She has rebuilt her life. She has a family. She has people around her who don't know the history. He paused. That is her choice to make, not mine. Then she needs to be the one to make it, Amelia said. Contact her today. Tell her what's coming. Tell her Ryan's people will likely surface the transaction with or without her consent, because if they can hurt you, they will try and give her the choice of getting ahead of it on her own terms, or having it happen to her the way it happened to all of us. Melissa was very still beside her listening. Damien looked at Amelia for a long moment. You understand that's the same thing someone did for my mother, he said. I know, she said. I think that's why you understand why it matters. Her name was Catherine. Amelia did not learn this until later, and when she did not share it with anyone. What she learned was that Damien made contact at 10:15 that morning, and that Catherine called back within 20 minutes, and that the call lasted 47 minutes, and that when Damien came back into the room, his face had the quality of someone who had carried something for a long time and had finally been given permission to set it down. She's going to make a statement, he said. On her own terms, through her own attorney. She's going to disclose the transaction with the context that Ryan's people will remove. He paused. She said she's been waiting for something like this for 11 years. She said she was starting to wonder if she was going to die before it happened. Amelia did not say anything for a moment. Is she okay? She said. He looked at her with the expression she had first seen at the gala, the one she'd recognized as something real, underneath the surface, the thing that existed before the performance of competence and control was assembled over it. She cried, he said, when I told her about you, about the gala, about the USB drive. He stopped. She said she wished someone had kissed a stranger at a party for her. The words landed in the room quietly. Melissa made a small sound beside Amelia and turned away to look at something that didn't exist because she needed a moment that wasn't watched. Amelia kept her eyes on Damien. Thank you, she said. You're the one who told me to call her, he said. "You're the one who picked up the phone," she said. Ryan's counterfiling came in at 11:45. Defamation. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. Unlawful recording. 3 counts filed simultaneously, the legal equivalent of throwing everything against a wall with maximum force to see what created the most noise before anything could stick. Patricia called while Amelia was reading through the summary on her phone. "It's a pressure tactic," Patricia said before Amelia could speak. "Every one of these counts has significant procedural problems. The defamation claim requires him to prove falsity, which means putting himself in a position where the truth of what you've said is adjudicated. His team knows that. This filing is not about winning those counts. It's about generating news and creating the impression that there are 2 equal sides to this story." "There aren't 2 equal sides," Amelia said. "No," Patricia said. "There aren't. But in a news cycle, the existence of a counterfiling creates the visual of a dispute rather than an exposure, and that's what he needs right now." "What does he need specifically?" "Doubt," Patricia said. "He needs enough doubt in the public mind that his business relationships hold while he fights this. If his board loses confidence, if his major clients start reviewing their contracts, the financial pressure accelerates everything in ways that are very difficult for him." She paused. "Which is why the board call is happening at 1 o'clock. Amelia went still. "What board call?" "His company's board of directors called an emergency session this morning," Patricia said. "I have a contact who is adjacent to that meeting. Ryan is being asked to provide context for the current situation." She paused significantly. "That is not a standard occurrence for a CEO dealing with what the board considers a personal matter. The fact that they called an emergency session means someone on that board has seen something that concerned them enough to act." "The video," Amelia said. "I don't know what they've seen," Patricia said carefully. "What I know is that 3 board members resigned from Ryan's charitable foundation last night quietly, and that his CFO has not returned calls this morning from 2 institutional investors who both got in touch with my office independently to ask about the status of the civil action." Amelia sat down. The world was moving faster than she had tracked. She had been focused on the legal maneuvering on Ryan's counterfiling on Catherine's statement and Diane's documents and Sarah's thread. And meanwhile, an entire other front was moving without her. The financial world, the institutional world, the world of boards and investors, and quiet phone calls between people with money who had suddenly started wondering if the man they were attached to was a liability. "He's losing the board," she said. "He may be losing the board," Patricia said. "We don't know yet." "If he loses the board, then his leverage changes dramatically," Patricia said. "His ability to fund a prolonged legal fight to retain the caliber of attorneys he currently has, to maintain the social infrastructure he's built, all of it is tied to his professional standing." "He knows that," Amelia said. "He knows that," Patricia agreed. "Which is why I want you to be very careful today. A cornered person is unpredictable in ways a person who still has options is not." After she hung up, she sat with that for a moment. Cornered. She had spent 2 years being the cornered one. She understood what it felt like from the inside, the particular calculus of someone who had no good options and was therefore capable of choices that a person with options would never make. She did not feel good about Ryan being cornered. She noticed that she did not feel good about it, and she noticed that this surprised her. She had expected to feel satisfaction or something adjacent to it, and instead what she felt was a cold, clear alertness. Not mercy, not regret, just the sober recognition that a cornered Ryan Mitchell was more dangerous than a Ryan Mitchell who still believed he had the upper hand. She got up and went to find Damien. "He's going to come at you directly," she said. Damien looked up from his desk. He had moved to his home office at some point in the last hour, and she had knocked and come in, which was itself something the ease of moving through his space, without the constant background calculation of permission that had governed every movement she made in Ryan's apartment. "Probably," he said. "Not legally," she said. "He has attorneys for the legal moves. I mean personally. He's going to try to reach you directly. He's going to find a point of leverage, and he's going to use it. Damien set down his pen. What makes you say that? Because that's what he does when the official channels aren't working fast enough, she said. He goes around them. He finds the personal thing, the thing that's not in any filing, the thing that can't be addressed in a courtroom, and he uses it. She met his eyes. He knows about your mother's foundation. The room went very quiet. How would he know about the foundation? Damien said. His voice was even. Careful, because he's had people looking at you since the gala, she said. He's had 48 hours. The foundation is not publicly tied to your name, but it's also not invisible if you're looking with the right resources. And Ryan has the right resources. She paused. He's going to threaten it. He's going to find a way to expose it, or threaten to expose it, or create enough noise around it that the women it serves become visible in ways that endanger them. Damien was very still. She had seen him still before he was a naturally contained person, someone who processed inward rather than outward. This was different. This was the stillness of someone who had just had a thing they protected, named by someone who understood exactly why it mattered. How long have you been thinking about this? He said. Since Patricia mentioned the board call, she said. If he's losing his business infrastructure, the foundation is the next pressure point. It's the thing that would hurt you most personally, and that also creates collateral damage to people who have nothing to do with this. He looked at her for a long moment. What do you suggest? He said. Move the foundation, she said. Not physically, structurally. Get it into a legal structure that can't be connected to your name by a hostile search. Today. Whatever attorneys can do that fastest, have them do it. He was already reaching for his phone. There's something else, she said. He stopped. If he surfaces the foundation to hurt you, and the story becomes about his attempt to expose vulnerable women in order to retaliate against you, that's not a story that helps Ryan. She held his gaze. That's a story that finishes him. He looked at her. You're thinking about letting him make that move, he said. I'm thinking about being prepared if he makes that move, she said carefully. I'm not suggesting we manufacture anything. I'm saying that if he reaches for the foundation as a weapon, we need to be ready to make sure that what the world sees is not Damian Romano's shady financial history, but Ryan Mitchell attempts to expose domestic violence survivors in retaliation for civil lawsuit. Damian was quiet. Patricia needs to know this is a possibility, she said. She will in 10 minutes, he said. He picked up the phone. She left the office and went back to the main room where Melissa was on the couch with her own phone managing the steady stream of people who had been contacting her since last night's video. Friends, family, people who had believed Ryan's version and were now sending careful qualifying messages that all said in various forms I didn't know. I should have asked. I'm sorry. Melissa looked up. He's going to try something today, Amelia said. I know, Melissa said. What do we do? We stay here, Amelia said. We don't give him anything to work with. And we let Patricia and Damien run the things they're running while we stay completely quiet and entirely visible and boring. Melissa almost smiled. Boring. The most boring publicly present clearly fine women in New York, Amelia said. He wants drama. He wants images of chaos. We give him two sisters eating lunch. They ordered lunch. It was the strangest and most deliberate act of normalcy Amelia had performed in 2 years. She sat at the kitchen counter with her sister and ate a sandwich and drank sparkling water and talked about their parents, about Melissa's job, about a television show Melissa had been watching that Amelia had never had access to because Ryan had opinions about what they watched, and those opinions had over time become the only opinions in the room. At 12:40, her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered it. Amelia. Ryan's voice. She had not heard his voice since the gala. She had blocked his number, had been insulated behind Patricia and Damien and Marcus and the 43 floors, and she had known intellectually that she would hear it again in a deposition in a courtroom in whatever form the next months required. She had prepared herself for eventually, not 12:40 on a Thursday. She did not respond immediately. She let the silence sit for 2 full seconds, which was enough for Melissa to look up and read her face and go very still. "You need to stop this," Ryan said. His voice was controlled, the public voice, the reasonable voice. "You need to call Patricia Howe and tell her to withdraw the filing. Whatever you think you have, don't," Amelia said, "is not what you think it is. You've been influenced by someone who has reasons of his own for going after me, and you're being used, and I understand that you can't see that right now because you're—" "Ryan," she said. He stopped. "Your attorneys received the filing at 9 o'clock this morning," she said. "Patricia has the video. She has the recordings. She has Diane's documents and Sarah's statement, and a forensic review of my medical records, and an independent psychological evaluation dated yesterday. She has enough." She paused. "Call your attorneys. Don't call me. You don't know what you're doing," he said, and now the control was thinner, the edge beneath it more audible. "You don't know what this costs. Not just for me, for you. For your career, for your family, for every relationship you have. I have been patient with you. I have been patient," she said. The word came out of her mouth with a flatness that she felt in her own bones. "You've been patient," she said again. "Amelia, I have a video, Ryan," she said. "Not a description, not a memory. A video. Of that night in the kitchen. 14 months ago." She heard his breathing change. "I was awake. I was always awake." Silence. The specific silence of a person whose narrative has just collapsed under them. "That video doesn't exist," he said. "Patricia has watched it," she said. "Sophia has authenticated it. Dr. Okafor's evaluation references the night it describes." She kept her voice completely level. "It exists." More silence. And then something she had not predicted. He laughed. It was a small, cold, entirely controlled sound that made the hair on her arm stand up, because it was the laugh she had heard only a handful of times in 2 years. And it was the one that meant he had moved from one mode to another. The reasonable mode was gone. He was done with the reasonable mode. "You think one video ends this," he said. "I think it's a strong start," she said. "I have resources you have not begun to calculate," he said. "I have people in every room that matters in this city. I have been building my position here for 15 years, and you have been building yours for 48 hours, with a man who has his own considerable legal exposure. Whatever you think you're starting." "I already started it," she said. 9 o'clock this morning. Check your phone." She ended the call. Her hands were completely steady. She looked at Melissa. Melissa was staring at her with an expression that was somewhere between terrified and something that looked at its edges like awe. "Was that?" Melissa started. "Yes," Amelia said. "He called you directly." "Yes." "That's—" Melissa stopped, reorganized. "Patricia needs to know he called you directly." "Yes." Amelia was already dialing. "And I need to know if that call can be added to the record." And it could. New York, one-party consent. Her recording because she had started recording the moment she saw the unknown number, a habit she had built in the last 14 months that she had never had cause to use until now. Patricia added it to the file with the particular satisfaction of a woman who had been doing this for 30 years and recognized a gift when she received one. "He's panicking," Patricia said. "He didn't sound panicked," Amelia said. "That's what panic sounds like in someone like Ryan Mitchell," Patricia said. The laugh, the pivot to resources and long-term positioning. He's reciting his own power back to himself because something has happened that he didn't control, and he needed to say it out loud to reassure himself it was still true. "The board meeting," Amelia said. "The board meeting did not go well for him," Patricia said. "I can't confirm details yet, but I can tell you that 2 of his largest institutional investors have been in contact with our office today asking questions about the timeline of the civil action. That is not standard behavior from investors who believe their CEO is going to weather a personal matter. Amelia sat down. He's losing them, she said. He may have already lost them, Patricia said. The call to you was a man trying to apply direct pressure because the institutional pressure has slipped out of his hands. After the call, she sat in the quiet of the main room and let herself feel the full weight of what was happening. Not the adrenaline version of it, not the tactical version, not the version she had been running on for 72 hours, the real weight of it. 2 years of her life. 14 months of a USB drive. 3 other women whose silence had cost them something she understood in her own body. A charity gala and a desperate kiss, and a man who had asked 4 words that changed everything. She heard Damien come into the room, and she did not turn around immediately. The foundation is protected, he said. Marcus moved the structure this morning. His attorneys did the rest. She nodded. Ryan called me, she said. A pause. When Pete, 12:40. She heard him cross the room. He sat down in the chair across from her. What did he say? He asked. She told him, all of it. The reasonable voice, the pivot, the laugh, the resources speech. She told it accurately and without editorializing the way she had learned to give information in Patricia's conference room, clean, precise, usable. When she finished, Damien was quiet for a moment. He's afraid, he said. I know. Not of the lawsuit, Damien said. He's been in legal situations before. He knows how to manage them. He's afraid of the video. Yes, because the video is the one thing he can't explain. He tried, she said. He said it didn't exist. What did you say? She told him. He looked at her for a long moment with the expression that was his version of something she still didn't have a perfect name for, the one that showed up when she did something that caught him genuinely off guard when the person he was looking at exceeded the category he'd put her in. You told him you were awake, he said. Yes, he didn't know that for 14 months. No. So every time he looked at you, every time he stopped, reassembled. Every time he thought he was controlling the situation, you were already 3 steps ahead of him. I didn't know what I was going to do with it, she said honestly. I just knew I needed something real, something that couldn't be explained away. She looked at her hands. I was so scared for so long that the only place I could put any of it was into collecting evidence and hoping that someday I'd know what to do with it. She looked back up. I guess I figured it out. Damien leaned forward with his elbows on his knees and looked at her with the full weight of his attention. Amelia, he said. She waited. After this is over, not the lawsuit that will take time, but after the immediate wave, after Ryan has been served and the board has done what the board is going to do and the media cycle has moved on to the next thing. He paused. I'd like to still know you. The directness of it landed in the room cleanly. No performance, no strategic framing, just the sentence itself. She held his gaze. That's a significant thing to say to someone you met 72 hours ago, she said. I know, he said. Under the most abnormal possible circumstances, she said. I know that too. I'm not in a position to think about what I want personally, she said. Not right now. I am still in the middle of something and I need to be completely in the middle of it without dividing my attention. I know, he said. I'm not asking you for anything right now. I'm telling you something, so you have it. She looked at him. This man who read Edith Wharton at 4 a.m, because sincerity felt like a virtue worth preserving. Who had moved a woman's money and protected her life and never told anyone. Who had watched a ballroom from across the room and seen the thing everyone else was missing. Who had said, I believe you without hesitation, and then spent 72 hours proving that he meant it. I know you're not asking, she said. I'm saying I heard you. He nodded. She stood up. I need to call my parents, she said. Before Ryan gets to them. I should have done it yesterday. Do you want? He started. I'll do it alone, she said. But thank you. She went to the guest room and sat on the bed and called her mother. Her mother answered on the first ring and said, "Amelia, sweetheart, I've been seeing things on the news and I don't understand." And Amelia said, "Mom, I need you to listen to me. I'm okay, I'm safe, and I need to tell you something true." And then she did what she had done for 72 hours, and what she would have to keep doing for months to come. She told the truth, all of it clearly, and without softening. And she let her mother cry, and she held the phone steady, and she did not apologize for any of it. 3 weeks later, Ryan Mitchell's board voted to remove him as CEO. The vote was 6-2. The two dissenting votes were board members who had known him personally for over a decade. The 6 who voted to remove him included the CFO, who had declined to return investor calls the morning after the filing, and 2 independent directors who issued a joint statement saying only that the decision reflected their responsibility to the organization. Ryan's attorney issued a statement claiming the vote was retaliatory and legally challengeable. Patricia issued a one-line response noting that the board's governance decisions were outside the scope of the civil action. Diane Vasquez gave a formal deposition. Sarah gave a formal deposition. The third woman, the one they had not been able to reach, initially contacted Patricia's office 2 days after Sarah's deposition and said she had seen the coverage and wanted to add her account to the record. Her NDA, like the others, contained the voiding clause. The clause was identical across all 3 documents. Ryan's legal team filed a motion to exclude the video on the grounds that Amelia had been in an induced state when she made the recording. Dr. Okafor testified in a preliminary hearing with the calm, credentialed certainty of a man who understood that his job in this room was to be unmovable. He explained methodically and without drama that the medical records from the prescribing physician who had been contacted by Patricia's office and who had, when presented with the full picture, agreed to cooperate, showed that the dosage prescribed was calibrated specifically to produce a sedative effect within 20 minutes of ingestion. He then produced Amelia's hair follicle analysis, taken the week after the gala, which showed trace metabolite levels inconsistent with regular ingestion of the prescribed dose. She had not been taking the pill regularly. She had been holding it under her tongue and disposing of it for most of 14 months. The judge excluded the motion. The video was in. 6 months after the gala, Amelia stood in a space in Tribeca that still smelled like fresh paint and possibility. It was smaller than she had imagined a studio would be, which was fine, because the version she had imagined during the worst nights had been compensating for the smallness she felt inside, and she no longer needed to compensate for that. It was hers. Her name was on the lease. Not Ryan's name, not Damien's name, not a name attached to any condition or any arrangement she hadn't chosen freely and with full information. Just her name. Amelia Carter Photography. A sign that was going up next week, which she had designed herself, which she had argued about with exactly no one, because no one had an opinion about it that she was required to accommodate. She had spent the morning here alone, setting up equipment, arranging things the way she wanted them, stopping periodically to take in the particular quality of the light at different hours, which was what photographers did when a space was theirs. Melissa came by at noon with coffee and a plant she insisted was impossible to kill, which Amelia immediately moved to a different spot than the one Melissa had designated, and Melissa had rolled her eyes in exactly the way she had rolled her eyes since they were children. And Amelia had felt something so ordinary and so enormous in that exchange that she had to look away for a moment. Dr. Reyes at 2. Not a crisis session. A regular session, the first of what was now a standing weekly appointment. They had been meeting for 5 months, and it was not dramatic, and it was not a rescue. It was the slow, unglamorous work of reassembling the parts of yourself that someone else's hands had moved out of place. And some sessions Amelia left feeling lighter, and some sessions she left feeling like she had turned over a rock and found things under it that needed to be looked at carefully in the available light, and both kinds were necessary. At 4, Damien came by. He knocked, which she had noticed. He always did, always knocked, always waited, which was a thing she had not appreciated fully in the first weeks, because she had been too focused on surviving to register the texture of how he moved through her spaces. She registered it now. "How does it look?" he said from the doorway. Like mine, she said. He smiled. The full version of it, which she had learned to wait for because it was rarer than the partial version and worth waiting for. He came in, and she showed him where things would go. The shooting space, the editing corner, the small waiting area she had put 2 chairs in because she liked the idea of clients sitting somewhere comfortable rather than standing in a hallway. He listened and looked and asked one question, which was about the light source she planned to use for portrait work, and she answered it at length because she had been thinking about it for weeks and had opinions, and it turned out that Damian Romano was genuinely interested in the answer. Not performing interest, she could tell the difference now. She was very good at telling the difference now. Patricia called this morning, she said when they had come back to the center of the space and were standing in the light from the windows. He waited. Ryan's team is discussing a settlement, she said. Not what they were offering in the first weeks. A real settlement. Admission of harm. Compensatory amounts for all 3 women. Injunctive terms that restrict his professional activity in ways that have real teeth. She looked at the light on the floor. And a provision that voids the ND as permanently and on the record. Damian was quiet. The provision is the part that matters most, she said. I know, he said. Because if the NDAs are voided on the record, Diane and Sarah and the 3rd woman can say what they want whenever they want without legal consequence, which means Ryan Mitchell can never use silence as a weapon again. Not against them. She looked up. Patricia says we can probably push for more. That the video is strong enough that we could go all the way and win more in a full proceeding. What do you want? He said. She had been sitting with this question since the call. She thought about what winning looked like. The full proceeding, the public verdict, the extended timeline, the years of deposition and counterfiling, and media cycle, and her own life on the examination table, while his attorneys looked for any handhold they could find. She thought about what the settlement offered. Real terms, real consequences. The NDAs voided. A provision that required Ryan to complete a structured intervention program as a condition of the settlement, which was not punishment enough. No piece of paper was punishment enough, but which created a record and a precedent and a set of eyes on him that had never existed before. She thought about Diane sitting in her car for an hour outside her own house. She thought about Sarah keeping a folder updated every time Ryan's name appeared in the news for 4 years. She thought about Catherine, who had been waiting for something like this for 11 years. She thought about the studio and the lease with her name on it, and Dr. Reyes at 2 o'clock, and Melissa's unkillable plant in the wrong spot, and her parents who had driven up from New Jersey the week after the gala, and sat in this same city, and listened to everything, and said at the end of it, not we should have known, or why didn't you tell us, but just you are our daughter, and we are here now. She thought about a ballroom and a desperate kiss, and 4 words that cracked something open. I want it to be over, she said. Not because I'm afraid of what more would cost, because I'm done giving him my time. She met Damian's eyes. 18 months of litigation is 18 months of my life organized around Ryan Mitchell. I'm done organizing my life around Ryan Mitchell. Damian nodded. Slowly. Something in his expression resolved not because he had been pushing her toward any particular answer, but because he had been waiting to understand what she actually wanted, and now he did. Tell Patricia to negotiate, he said. I already did, she said. Before I called you. The corner of his mouth moved. Of course you did, he said. She looked at him. 6 months since the gala. 6 months of the most complicated, pressurized, extraordinary passage of her life. 6 months of Patricia and depositions and media coverage and the slow revelation of a man whose structure had been built on other people's silence, and the equally slow revelation of another man who was not what anyone said he was, and also not without complexity, and also underneath everything, someone who showed up and knocked and waited and asked what she wanted and listened to the answer. Damian, she said. Yes. I'm ready, she said. He looked at her. For what? He said carefully, the way he asked questions, when he was not sure what door he was being invited to open. "To have a conversation about what comes next," she said. "For us, if there's an us, without a crisis between us, and without me using you as a reference point for everything Ryan wasn't." She held his gaze. "Just a real conversation, between two people who know each other now, not very well, but better than most." He was quiet for a moment. "I'd like that," he said. "I'm going to be difficult," she said. "I have a lot of things I'm still working out. I don't trust easily, and when I think I trust too easily, I second-guess it, and when I second-guess it, I sometimes go quiet in ways that probably look like withdrawal, but are actually just me figuring out which instincts are mine and which ones are ones he installed." "I know," he said. "You say I know a lot," she said. "I've been paying attention," he said, "for 6 months." "I know," she said. He looked at her. She looked back. And there, in the middle of her studio that smelled like fresh paint in the light she had already memorized, in the space that had her name on the lease and no one else's opinion in it, Amelia Carter let herself hold the gaze of the man who had first looked at her and seen the truth, and she did not look away. She had walked across a ballroom in desperation and kissed a stranger. She had built a case from 14 months of invisible preparation and walked through the door it opened. She had told the truth in courtrooms and conference rooms, and on her mother's phone, and in a 90-second video that 100,000 strangers had watched because something in it recognized them too. She had signed a lease and hung a sign and kept an appointment with her therapist and moved her sister's plant to a better spot and gotten up every morning and chosen one more time to be the person she had always been before someone tried to make her into someone smaller. And Ryan Mitchell, the man who had spent 2 years telling her she was fragile, unstable, lucky to be loved, impossible to believe, was sitting somewhere on the other side of the city, with a settlement agreement in front of him and the names of 4 women underneath it, and the understanding, finally irreversibly, that his version of the story was no longer the only one being told. The woman who had kissed a stranger to survive had become something he had never once in 2 years believed she could be. The one who won.